1. Welcome to Happy Trails Campground and to our party. If I'd said it once, I'd said it 1,000,000 times today. Here's our brochure. We cater to campers with tents, pop-ups, fifth wheels, and vans. I smiled and shrugged. We cater to all, even the ones who need a place to sleep. I flipped open the brochure to show the young couple who'd come to the monthly party we hosted. We have cute bungalows that range in size and need. Are you here for the long Labor Day weekend? We've been wanting to do the whole Appalachian Trail, but figured we'd better do some small hiking first. There was an eager look on the young woman's face that I'd seen before. We've a couple of days off and thought we'd drive down and check it all out. I'm the hiker. Beth here. Well, the young man's eyes squinted at her as he smiled. She's more along the lines of a glamper. Oh, silly. Beth rolled her eyes and put her hand on his chest. Chuck doesn't give me much credit. Don't get me wrong, I love room service and a good spa, but if we're going to get married, I'd better start doing something he likes. Then Happy Trails is for you. I looked between them. The Appalachian Plateau goes right through the Daniel Boone National Forest. I pointed towards the lake. I know you can't see it now because of all the people gathered around the band, but right beyond the tree line is the start of a beautiful 5-mile hike. It's maybe one step above a beginner, but it will bring you to an amazing waterfall. Beth? Chuck put his hands out. It's up to you. A bungalow or the bed and breakfast downtown? The door of the office swung open. Dottie Swaggart's unlit cigarette bounced between her dry lips. She pushed her hands up in her short red hair, fluffing it out a little. I'm sorry to bother you, Mae. Someone's on the phone about the last bungalow for rent. I told them the fee, and they insisted on talking to the owner. Her brows cocked. I told them that you were busy with the party, but they insisted. And if I know you... She looked between Chuck and Beth. Trust me, I know her. You'd want me to come get you. Dottie held the portable phone. You only have one bungalow left for rent? Chuck asked, his brows knitted together with worry. I do. We were totally booked, but due to some unforeseen circumstances, someone canceled at the last minute. I took a few steps closer to Dottie to get the phone. Thanks to social media and all those hashtags, we usually fill a vacancy within minutes of a cancellation. It was true. For years, I'd said I'd never get on social media. That was before I became the owner of Happy Trails Campground in Normal, Kentucky, sight unseen. Once I did see it, boy howdy. It had needed a redo more than I needed a life do-over. That's why me and Happy Trails were perfect for each other. I had discovered not only myself, but that social media could help a business better than any other type of marketing. Just as I extended my arm to grab the phone, Beth began to stutter and mumble something. What? I asked and leaned in an ear. We'll take it. Beth bounced on her toes and clasped her hands together. She looked at Chuck. Right? The tone in her voice didn't seem so sure. Right! Chuck jumped at the chance. Beth threw her arms around Chuck. Dottie, can you please tell the person on the phone the bungalow is no longer available? I asked her, knowing that she'd set this whole thing up. It wasn't the first time someone was on the fence about renting either a lot or a bungalow, and Dottie pulled the old someone wants to rent now trick, making it a tad more urgent for Chuck and Beth to say yes. All of us turned around when we heard quick toots of a car horn, followed by a couple of long beeps from a fast-paced carload of people driving up from the entrance of the campground. Woohoo! Said a young man with a big smile, dangling his arm out the window. There was a beer in the grip of his hand and a flashy watch on his wrist. The car came to an abrupt stop. I sucked in a deep breath and let out a slight moan. This wasn't the impression I wanted Beth and Chuck to have on their first camping experience. Guys, settle down, said the driver, who was also a young man, as he tried to calm down the others after they all started to celebrate their arrival. He got out of the car and stuck his head back through the driver's side window to give the group one last scolding. "Why don't we go ahead and get you registered?" I gestured for Beth and Chuck to follow me into the office. I glanced at Dottie. "Why don't you see what they want?" I suggested, knowing she didn't take a whole lot of bull and would send them on their way. "I'll be more than happy to do that." The look of satisfaction on her face made me smile. "Sorry about that. I wanted to make sure Chuck and Beth knew Happy Trails was a nice, relaxing place with fun, not rowdy guests. There was an immediate need for me to apologize. The office space wasn't big. It was just a small, open space with metal files and 2 desks. There was a big window on each wall, which made it easy for us to see all sides of the campground while we were in there. "Here are some papers I need you to fill out." I handed them a clipboard with all the papers and a pen tied around the metal clip with a piece of yarn. "This one is for the rental agreement. It has all the particulars about trash and how you need to leave things after you check out." I flipped through each page as I pointed out what they were. "I'll need a copy of your license for safety purposes if you're going to be going hiking. Not that we've lost a hiker," I assured them. My eyes glanced over their shoulders, and I could see that the car of boys had emptied out. All of them were standing with their arms crossed, arguing with Dottie. "While you fill those out, I'm going to go check on Dottie." I didn't want those boys to bring any undue attention to the campground, especially since they were here during our monthly themed party. I shut the door behind me. "Is everything okay out here?" "I want to see the owner, and she won't let us," the one I recognized as the driver told me. "I've had a reservation for me and my friends for months. It's my bachelor weekend." "They don't have their reservation number." Dottie's eyes lowered. She wasn't too trusting of people, and it made her a great office manager. "William Hinson." I stuck my arm out for him to shake. "Yes, that's me," he said with a calm voice and straightened his shoulders a little more. "Do you have our reservation?" "I do. Remember the reservation that was booked for 2 weeks because we don't do middle-of-the-week reservations for the bungalows?" I looked over at Dottie. Whoever had booked the bachelor party had reserved the bungalow way in advance. "Mr. Hinson's bride sent a few items for you and your friends ahead of time. A couple of days ago, we'd gotten a big package in the mail from William's bride-to-be. It was filled with snacks, movies, and gear for hiking and fishing." "She did?" He grinned. The other 4 boys patted his back. "He's got a good one." I recognized the one that was flailing his arm out the car window earlier. "Jameson." He nodded at me. "My name is Jameson Todd Downey." "I get that. I'm Mae." I wasn't about to give my full name, which was Maybelline Grant West. It wasn't uncommon for Southerners to give you their full names upon introduction. The more we talked, the less rowdy they were, just excited. "You've got these yahoos." Dottie wasn't very forgiving when a first impression made her cringe. I could feel the tension coming off her shoulders as they hugged her ears. "I will take them to their bungalow while you finish up with Beth and Chuck," I said to Dottie. It was nice to be able to team up with Dottie. She'd been the manager at Happy Trails way before I'd gotten there. I'd come to rely on her for a lot of things, but hospitality to everyone wasn't her specialty. She was fabulous at putting together parties and keeping the campground running like a well-oiled machine, but she didn't take any nonsense, which these boys seemed to have plenty of. "Hold on a second," I told the boys, and went back into the office with Dottie. "Beth and Chuck, this is Dottie. She's going to finish up getting y'all settled. You're in great hands." They nodded eagerly and went back to filling out the paperwork. I walked over to the filing cabinet and opened the H drawer for Hinson to find William's reservation. There was a lot of paperwork and computer work to be done. It was best to get him to fill out the paperwork at the bungalow he'd rented instead of bringing him in the office with the couple. "They might need a starter camping kit," I said to Dottie about the couple. I grabbed the key to the bungalow with 4 bedrooms where we'd stuck William and his friends, plus a clipboard full of paperwork. "I'm not sure if they've got towels and things either." When I finally got settled into being owner of Happy Trails, I realized many campers forget everyday things like toothbrushes, towels, and other personal hygiene items. That's when I came up with the idea to put together camper packs. We offered them at several different prices, depending on what was included. We also rented fishing and hiking supplies, including poles, backpacks, and picnic baskets. I partnered with a few of the local shops in Normal, offering their items in different baskets. The Cookie Crumble Bakery's delicious chocolate chip cookies that were the size of my head were a hit, along with the coffee from the new coffee house in town. Gert Hobson, owner of the Trails Coffee Shop, put together packages of coffee and filters for the rental campers and the bungalows. She also supplies the complimentary coffee I offer in the morning at the recreation center on the campground. Anytime I could help a local store, I did. "Are you good?" I asked Dottie before I left to get the boys settled into their bungalow. I could see there was still some tension about the Hinson bachelor party. "I'm fine." She didn't sound fine, but there wasn't any way to question her in front of customers, so I left and decided I'd take it up with her later. "Why don't you head on down to Bungalow 5? I'll be right behind you." I put the items in the golf cart. The bungalows were located at the farthest end of the campground and more nestled into the woods, while the concrete pads for the campers were out in the open, with a few lots that had tree coverage. "Thank you." William took the keys. "Boys, back in the car." He lifted his arm in the air and twirled his finger around. They all piled in. "Y'all sure do have some fancy watches." I noticed they all looked alike. "I got them for all the groomsmen as their present for being in my wedding. They even have their initials engraved on the back." He flipped his off and showed me. Southerners love to put their initials on everything, including shower curtains. "Be sure you adhere to the 15-mile-an-hour speed limit," I warned him. That was something I'd definitely kick them out of the campground for. We had many families with children and pets, including my Fifi. "I'll be right behind you. First I have to stop by my own camper." They took off in their car, and I got into the golf cart. Fall in love with Kentucky was the theme of the month and honored Labor Day. Dottie loved how she incorporated the fall season in the name. It was one of the most popular seasons at the Daniel Boone National Park. She'd used different camping items to decorate: canoes, a couple of tents decorated with bobbers and plastic fish, checkered tablecloths, bourbon barrels, and campfires going with a s'mores station. The recreation center had games for everyone, including cornhole, horseshoes, and ladder golf, just to name a few. Blue Ethel and the adolescent farm boys were on the stage, singing their hearts out, while they played the banjo, guitar, harmonica, and the jug. It was a true bluegrass band that went nicely with the theme. There were corn stalks with bales of hay all over the place for extra seating. Pumpkins, gourds, and colorful mums filled old tobacco baskets and planters of different sizes. I pushed down the gas pedal on the golf cart to head on down to my camper. The fresh air filled my lungs and spread a happiness through my body. A few months ago, I'd never imagined myself here, much less the owner. When I found out I was the owner, I decided I was going to sell it as fast as I could find a buyer. As I started to get to know the small southern town of Normal, the more I began to enjoy the slow-paced life surrounded by nature. It was food for the soul, and when a buyer did come along, there was no way I could even imagine letting it go. Dottie Swaggart and I, along with many members of the community, had brought Happy Trails back to what it used to be. For me, it was home. 2. "Hey there, little mama." I bent down to pet Fifi, my pregnant poodle, when I walked into my camper. "I thought you might need to go potty." My eyes dipped down on the corners when I had to help her up. She was so big with the 3 little ones that she had a hard time holding her tinkle and waddled when she walked. There were times when I didn't let her out fast enough and she'd pottied on the floor. I never cussed her, but I did call Ethel Biddle's brown and white pug, Roscoe, a few colorful words. Fifi nudged me with her nose. I picked her up and took her outside to do her business. There you are. Ty Randall was walking in front of the camper. He had on a pair of khaki shorts and a pinstriped blue button-up. It was the strange time of day when the sun was setting and the campground was blanketed with a cool breeze. I've not seen you all day. Nice evening we're having. It's gorgeous. We had a few late arrivals. I thought Dottie needed some help. My heart did a pitter-patter when his blue eyes looked at me. I took advantage of the effects of a nice deep breath of cool air to get me refocused. The rowdy boys. He looked towards the bungalows. You heard already? It was no secret gossip traveled fast around here, but within a couple of minutes? The deaf could hear them hooting and hollering all the way down the road. He ran his hand through his hair. I hope they don't cause trouble. Me too. Although I didn't think the group was terrible. It was a bachelor party, and there was a niggling feeling in my gut they were going to be a little rowdier than our normal group. They're only here for 3 days. It's going to be a beautiful 3 days for the holiday weekend. He flashed that gorgeous white smile. Do you think babies will make it even better? She's about to pop. I looked over at Fifi. She was struggling to make it over to a grassy area. She's about 63 days, which means any day now. The veterinarian told me Fifi's pregnancy would last around 9 weeks. She was already a few days pregnant when Tammy Jo Bentley had surrendered the pregnant 4-year-old to me. Long story short, I'd done some cleaning for Tammy Jo as a side hustle. When she was held in jail under suspicion of murder, she picked me, of all people, to take care of Fifi. I didn't know a thing about dogs, barely did now, but she was in my care. I couldn't watch her every move, so I let Ty's little brother, Timmy, take her for walks and play with her while I did things around the campground. It just so happened Ethel and her band were here for another monthly party, and she brought Roscoe. Timmy thought the 2 dogs were playing. They obviously weren't. The problem was that Fifi was insured due to a long line of prestige breeding, and one night at Happy Trails had changed that. Tammy Jo was beside herself, and since Fifi could no longer carry on the bloodline, she was no use to Tammy. Tammy Jo dropped her off at my camper and left me no room to protest. Long gone were the days Fifi spent at the spa. She was too busy running around the campground to worry about staying clean. The gourmet meals were long ago replaced with campfire leftovers and whatever dog food was on sale at the grocery store. But she seemed to be doing just fine. She was a happy little stinker who found a place in my entire heart, leaving just a smidge for Ty. I guess we better get a date in before you become a grandmother and all your time is taken. Ty's smile reached up to his eyes. I'd love that. This would make the 4th date we've had, but who was counting? The word date was being used very loosely here. What were you thinking? How about a nice hike to get in some fall colors before you get too busy to enjoy it? He was always taking my needs into consideration. It was one of the things that I just adored about him. I think it's perfect. I have tomorrow off. How about tomorrow? I asked. I've got to get through the lunch crowd at the diner first, he said. Ty had grown up in Normal. His dad, Ron, owned the Normal Diner located downtown. Ty and his dad were chefs. Ty's mom had died of cancer, leaving Ron to care for Ty's 2 younger brothers. Ty was living in San Francisco, working as a head chef in a farm-to-table restaurant, until his father's last illness, a severe burn to his hands from the fryers at the diner. He'd always rented a yearly lot from Happy Trails and used it as a vacation spot until he recently moved back full-time. Since then, we'd been dancing around the chemistry between us by having a cocktail here, bumping into each other there, and taking a couple of walks. Nothing really big, like driving in a car somewhere, and that's what I meant by loosely. What if we make it around 1 p.m.? That way, Dad can just do the cleanup, he suggested. It's perfect. Fifi will be ready to nap, and I'll have my walking shoes on. I'm looking forward to enjoying a little bit of nature. Something else that took me by surprise after I moved here. I used to hate camping and nature, but now that I'd grown up a little, in my 30s, I'd grown fond of the peacefulness and time spent with myself it offered me. There was a loud bang coming from the direction of Bungalow 5. "I better get them all settled in," I said to Ty as we said our goodbyes. I got Fifi settled back into the camper and made sure all her bowls were filled before I left. We didn't need little Mama hungry or thirsty. At this point, I'd fallen in love with the little rascal, and I just wanted to be safe during this pregnancy. Once Fifi had laid back down, I walked down to the bungalows. There wasn't anything going on. The bachelor party and the couple weren't there, and it appeared all was right with the world. I had some hope the initial excitement of the bachelor party had calmed down. The party was in full swing. By the looks of it, the party was going to go well into the night. Even Dottie Swaggart had joined Ron Randall on the makeshift dance floor in front of the band. On the walk back over to the lake, I noticed campers were taking advantage of the pedal boats, the games near the recreation center, and the food. From a distance, I saw Dottie give a little high five to Mayor Courtney Mackenzie. Dottie wasn't too fond of the mayor. She said the mayor was so crooked, you couldn't tell from her tracks if she was coming or going. Whatever that meant. I'd given up trying to figure out some of the things Dottie said. At the end of the dock, my friends from the laundry club were sitting on the edge with their toes dangling in the water. Abby Fawn, the Normal County Library librarian and local Tupperware consultant, pushed her long brown hair behind her shoulders and wildly waved me over. She nudged Bets Hager and pointed towards me. Bets brushed her bangs out of her eye. She and Abby were both waving at me. Queenie French smiled when she noticed me. Bets wore many hats, as if it wasn't hard enough to be the local preacher's wife with all the duties that came along with that job. She also cleaned houses and owned the laundry club. The laundry club was the laundromat located downtown, but it was much more than just a bunch of washers and dryers. It had become a place for us to hang out and visit. Bats had made it very cozy and welcoming by adding a coffee station, book club meetings, puzzles, and TVs. They took me in when I came to town and didn't deserve the kindness they extended. They truly have been instrumental in my staying in Normal and in the success of Happy Trails. "Your monthly parties keep getting bigger and bigger." Beth stood up and pulled the rubber hairband from around her wrist, tucking her long, wavy brown hair into a low ponytail. I can't take the credit. I nodded towards Abby. If it weren't for Abby's genius marketing skills, I'd never been able to get the word out. "Oh!" Abby leaned on one side of her hip and took her phone out. She pointed it towards me and Bets. "Smile." Bets and I laughed and put our heads together with big smiles on both of our faces. Hashtag Happy Trails Campground is a place for hashtag family, hashtag vacation with hashtag fun. Abby typed away. "I've got all my social media accounts tied together, so this photo will go everywhere." "Wait, stay there." There was a familiar voice behind me yelling, followed by heavy footsteps. When I turned around, I saw it was Allison Gilbert. Allison was the local reporter who wrote for the National Parks of America magazine and the Normal Gazette. Her heavy 35mm camera hung around her neck, and a big bag was strapped across her body. She was in work mode. "Let me grab a picture for the paper." She motioned for me and Bets to stick our heads together again. "Say s'mores." Bets and I laughed as we did what she told us to do. Slowly, she pulled the camera from her eye and left it near her cheek. I followed her eye that was looking over my shoulder. She was staring at Ranger Corbin Ashbrook, who was standing at the beginning of one of the trails, along with Mayor Courtney Mackenzie. Corbin was one of 3 forest rangers we had in our area of the Daniel Boone National Forest. During the campground parties, a ranger came around to make sure no one got on the trails and did crazy things after they'd been drinking. There were a lot of dangerous cliffs, drop-offs, and ledges in the park. Unfortunately, each hiking season brought unexpected deaths. Luckily, we had good rangers to help keep everyone safe. I didn't know a whole lot about Courtney, but I was happy to see her here at the party. We'd extended an invitation every month, only to be met with a decline. Wonder what's going on over there? Bets looked toward the trails. Shocker! Bets's nose curled. Looks like the mayor has her nose in it, too. Election year coming up. Queenie's southern drawl pulled out the letters in her word. She pushed the red headband off her brows and up to her forehead. She knows how to work it. Oh, I groaned. Corbin has a hold on William Hinson. He's having his bachelor party here. Looks like you've got your hands full. Abby lifted a brow. Yeah, I better get over there, I said, after I noticed Allison had already hightailed it over there, snapping photos. Bets Hager was a true friend and hurried next to me to help. Or maybe she was there for the gossip. Either way, from the sound of the escalating voices, I could use the backup. We rushed over as fast as our legs would go. The argument was getting louder and louder, starting to bring attention to themselves and make a scene. I just need a bandage, William spat with a slur, an obvious sign he'd had too much to drink. William jerked away from Corbin. What's your problem? You can't give me a bandage? William, I tried to get his attention. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my backup had disappeared. Ahem. Courtney cleared her throat. We made eye contact. Mayor, I said, since she obviously wanted me to note she was there. I'd never met the woman before. William and Corbin were still in a little scuffle in front of us. I see we have a rowdy visitor to our town. Mayor pinched a no-teeth grin. I'm a hard-working American that pays you to hike all day. William was just getting plain nasty. You should pay me for allowing you to work here. Okay, I stepped in. Let's get you back to your bungalow. I grabbed William's arm. I'm sorry, Corbin. I've done warned him and his friends. Corbin gave Bets an odd look when she shoved a napkin with a cookie on it in his face. Peanut butter? Yes, one of the church ladies made it especially for today. Bets spoke with pride. I'm allergic to peanuts, Corbin said, and his jaw loosened. He turned back to me. I'm not going to haul him in, but you need to keep an eye on that bunch. I looked at Bets and mouthed, thank you, because I wasn't sure if it was her that changed Corbin's mind with the cookie or because she was the preacher's wife. Either way, I truly appreciated it. Allison continued to snap away. Seriously, Allison? I asked. Are you really wanting photos of this? It doesn't look good for the community, and if you print those, people might not want to come visit or vacation. Mae, don't be ridiculous, the mayor said with laughter. Her jaw tensed, her eyes narrowed. Corbin knows this is our busy season. Yes, Mayor, I do. But I have a job to do, and if I have to shut down this part of the Daniel Boone National Park, I will, Corbin said. I jerked my head up to look at him. Courtney sucked in a deep breath, gave the most perfect smile, and her chest slowly went down as I watched her regain her composure. It's so much more than that. Courtney and Corbin gave each other a look that told me he knew what she was talking about. I'm going back with my friends. I'm getting married. William winced after he tried to jerk away from my grip where my nails were digging into him. No, you're going to get some sleep. It wasn't negotiable. Code W, Corbin said a little too loud, probably wanting to get the last word in since a crowd had gathered to see what all the excitement was about. Code W? William's head twisted around as I dragged him forward. Yeah, Code Wimp is what we call hikers like you. Corbin laughed harder. This is going to happen all the time if you shut down the entire park, I heard Allison say to Corbin. Seriously? A drought? Allison, leave it alone. Yep, there you go. Reporting on something that's not taken place yet. Corbin was in a bad mood, and and he wasn't going to leave anyone alone that approached him, but the word shutdown did catch my attention. If they shut down the park, we'd be in a world of hurt. "Come on," William jerked away. "Let me go with my friends," he whined. I pointed to the bungalow. "If you want to be kicked out and end your bachelor party right now, go ahead. But if you want a second chance, then you better go sleep it off," I said. He shuffled alongside of me with his head hung. "Listen," I said after we'd finally made it to the door of the bungalow. "There are no more chances. We are a family campground. We don't want rowdy, and I told your fiancée that when she booked your stay. If you can't behave like a grown man, I suggest you take your friends elsewhere." I wasn't good at kicking people out, but it was for his own good. "It can be dangerous up here if you can't control your liquor intake." I opened the door for him. "Now, you go in there and sleep this off. I'm going to grab you some food and bring it back." With his chin still hanging down, he finally went into the bungalow. "Listen, don't bring me any food. I think I just want to sleep, like you said." He shut the door. On my way back to the party, I could see Dottie had now joined the conversation between Allison and Corbin. Allison wasn't going to give up. She was relentless. I knew. She'd interviewed me for the National Parks magazine one time, and she dug into my past life, where I'd gone through the Kentucky foster care system after a horrible home fire had taken the lives of my parents. It was a life I'd left behind the minute I turned 18 years old. It was funny how I'd gotten back to Kentucky, and no shutdown was going to destroy it, especially because of a drought. 3. "Are you sure you're okay?" I looked down at Fifi as I poured myself the first cup of coffee of the morning. There would be more cups to follow. I was always exhausted the day after a monthly themed party. As the owner of the campground, I stayed up until the last person left to make sure all the campfires were out and the food was put away, which was well past my bedtime. We didn't need any fires, since the forest rangers were predicting a drought. We didn't need extra critters tearing up the food table. We had enough animals around here, and Fifi was about all I could handle at this moment. "I don't want to leave you here today if you don't feel good," I said into those sweet, big brown eyes. Her tail wiggled along with the entire back end. She was fine and happy, which made me happy. "You were a little restless," I told her as I filled up her bowl with kibble. "Are you about to have your babies?" The past couple of nights, she'd seemed really irritable and unable to get comfortable, keeping us both up. From all the research I'd done, I knew she'd become a little more fidgety as she got closer to having her babies. A few more pats on the head and kisses. I had my full thermos of coffee and was out the door. A blurred, blood-red sun rose above the tree line on the horizon. There was a slight breeze blowing a few of the leaves that had fallen off a little too early for the fall. There was a hint of cooler weather in the air, and it was almost time to put a sweater on over short sleeves, or a comfy sweatshirt. As if the weather and the beautifully painted sky weren't enough to fill me full of joy, the hiking date I had with Ty put a little more giddy-up in my step. I glanced back at his camper. His car was gone, though I knew it would be since he had to get up really early to open the diner. Dottie Swaggart was already at her desk, filling in all the reservation requests we'd gotten out of yesterday's party. It was one reason we did the party. "Well, doggy, we got us a lot of requests." She tapped the computer monitor. "Of course, we're booked for most of the requested dates, but I'm adding them to the mailing list and the email distribution list and giving them options for future dates." "Your party turned out great," I gushed on my way over to my desk, where I put my coffee down before I went to look over her shoulder. "This is going to keep me busier than a funeral home fan during the month of July," she nodded. Dottie always had a way with words, and she always made me smile. "Say, did you overhear anything about a drought in our part of the park?" I asked, referring to what I'd overheard from Allison yesterday when she asked Corbin about shutting down our part of the park.
There's always rumblings.
Dottie looked up from her computer. She leaned back in her chair, planting her elbows on the armrests.
Why?
Yesterday, Allison said something about how that sort of situation with William would happen all the time. When I said his name, Dottie rolled her eyes.
What does that mean?
Dottie's head turned as her eyes lowered, as if she were thinking about it. I guess if they close our trails, then people will still hike and get even more rowdy if there's no ranger on duty. I gnawed on my thoughts for a second before I shrugged it off and went over to my desk.
No need to worry about tomorrow's problems.
Dottie went back to inputting the information about potential campers into the computer.
What's on your agenda for your day off?
I've got to get the money to the bank from yesterday's check-ins, I said, and bent down next to my desk to open up the safe where we kept the money. And I curled my bottom lip under my front teeth and smiled like a teenager in love. I've got a hiking date at 1 with Ty. The campground reservations for rentals started on Sunday and ended on Saturday, which gave Henry, the Happy Trails handyman, only a few hours to clean the bungalows or the area around the lots to get ready for the next campers.
Well, butter my butt and call me a biscuit.
She smacked her desk so hard I jumped.
I can't believe it. There's nothing gonna stop y'all this time.
I figured taking off on Friday before the long weekend was better than my normal Saturday. I thumbed through some papers on the desk just to make sure everything was good for the day. Not that she couldn't get in touch with me if she needed to. I was still going to be on the property. She was right. Every time Ty and I did make some sort of plans, something awful would happen, like his younger brother getting sick before we were going out to supper. It's not like we're going in a car. We didn't want to take that chance. I laughed at how ridiculous it sounded. But we've spent some time together here and there. Nothing really alone. Not that hiking was truly alone, but sometimes being surrounded by nature could be romantic, and I was willing to see if there was a little more to my initial feelings for Ty than just a physical attraction.
Oh, honey, Dottie tisked, there's more to you two than a physical attraction.
She winked and reached next to her computer monitor to grab her box of cigarettes. I thought you were quitting. What happened? I asked.
Mind your own business.
She popped out of her chair and headed straight out the door. Instead of hounding her, I decided to grab the money to do the deposit, as well as the quarterly taxes. By the time I'd get those done and taken to the bank before I put the taxes in the mail, it'd be time for me to check on Fifi and change for my hiking date with Ty. It didn't seem like I'd been working on the deposit that long when Skip Tolliver strolled in the door. Skip was the mayor's brother, and he was always trying to start new businesses around town that never took off.
Hey there, Maybelline, he teased.
I see you've been talking about me to Bobby Ray Bonds. I grinned at how my longtime friend, Bobby Ray, referred to me. Just so we are clear, my real name is Maybelline, but I go by May.
He's a character.
Skip had that hiker look. He wore a plaid, long-sleeved shirt tucked into a pair of hunter green shorts with tall brown socks, ending with a pair of hiking boots all tied up. The loose, sandy blonde curls that fell around his head made me swoon with jealousy. If only my curly hair would lay loosely and not in springs.
But I was getting my oil changed down at Grassel's. Joel had Bobby Ray do it, and he was fast.
Yeah, he's been fooling around with cars as long as I've known him. It was Bobby Ray who I had to thank for getting me out of Kentucky and my old life. He'd given me the money to hop on a Greyhound bus. It wasn't until a few months ago, and after my interview conducted by Allison that went into the National Parks of America magazine, Bobby Ray'd found me. I put him up in a bungalow and got him a job at Grassel's gas station. He's really good at his job.
It was him that encouraged me to come see you.
Skip pulled out some business cards from his back pocket and handed me them.
I've opened up a new whitewater rafting business that actually runs along your Red Fox Trail.
The Red Fox Trail was aptly named because there were a lot of red foxes around these parts, and they seemed to love that trail in the park.
I was wondering if you wouldn't mind giving these out to your campers and maybe throwing me a bone in the social media area. I really want this business to take off.
He stared at me, leaving me in a very uncomfortable position. Are the rapids up? I asked. I'd heard it's a little dry out there.
You're talking about that drought thing?
His finger wagged back and forth between me and the window that had a clear shot of the trail's beginning.
My sister said something about that when I told her about this, and I really don't think it's going to be a problem.
It will be a problem if Corbin and the rest of the rangers decide to close down the trails around here. Bad for you and me. There was no sugarcoating it.
It's just a rumor, and don't take this the wrong way.
He put his hand out in front of him.
You've not been in Normal during a drought, and this isn't a drought. Sure, we had a brutal Indian summer, but look at those trees.
He pointed out the window.
They're vibrant with fall colors, and they'd be brown if there was a drought.
That made sense, and I'd never thought about that. I'll be more than happy to give those out. I lifted my hand to take them.
The social media?
There was hope on his face. Let me see what I can do. I can't promise anything, since I don't do that part of the business. I couldn't imagine Abby not throwing Skip a bone. Any new business to bring in tourists would help us all out.
Great.
He put his hands together and bowed down, walking backwards out the door.
I've got to run and get the word out. I truly appreciate it, Maybelline.
Do you work 7 days a week? I noticed his hours on the business card left no room for him to have a social life.
Yes, I do. I used to have a weekly Friday night commitment, but not anymore. He said, I'm passionate about getting this off the ground. Like you, I work all the time to do it.
I hope we can get you some business. I waved goodbye as he walked over to the door. Dottie and Skip passed each other on his way out and her way in.
Was he here to campaign?
Dottie asked suspiciously. No, he started another business. I handed her one of his cards. Whitewater rafting and canoeing.
Doesn't he watch the news?
There she went again, rolling her eyes and dismissing the card.
There's evidence of a drought.
I thought you said you'd not heard anything about it, I reminded her.
While you were in here playing nice with him, I did. You need to be careful who we align the campground with, especially since he's the brother of the mayor. Some citizens aren't happy with her, and they will think you are supporting her.
Geez, Dottie, I don't even think like that. I sure hoped no one thought that.
Anyways, I made a few phone calls, and the decision from the ranger station is ultimately Corbin's decision because he's the head ranger. But you can ask Hank about it.
Her brows lifted. Forget it. There's no way I'm going to call Detective Sharp for a thing. It had been a while since I'd seen Hank Sharp. He and I were like oil and vinegar. We didn't go together at all, even though I had to help him in the last 2 murder investigations in Normal, since I was somehow tangled up in both.
He's a ranger, too, she shrugged. It's all about business, and I'd sure hate to give back that money on your desk from tourist security deposits.
We required a one-night stay deposit when a reservation was booked. Campers had up until 1 week before their reservation to get back the money if they had to cancel. The reason for the week was because it wasn't like we could call someone on the waiting list and expect them to jump in their RV to come here. They needed a few days to get their RVs ready, take off work, and whatever else they needed to make it here. It was only fair to all parties. Clearly, with the stack of bills on my desk, the security deposit wasn't an issue. Forget it. I grabbed the deposit bag and put the money and slips inside. I'll wait to see what I hear from Ty. I zipped the bag and stuck it under my arm, grabbing the keys to the Ford Escort.
I'm just saying,
were the last words I heard from Dottie before the door clicked behind me on my way out. 4. The line inside the bank was about 5 people deep. It would have gone much faster if Ann Doherty wasn't talking everyone's ear off and catching up on the gossip. "Hi, Allison," I greeted her when she walked in, and suddenly was happy that Ann had the gift of gab. It would give me some time to ask Allison about her little chat with Corbin. "Did you like the party yesterday?" "It was fun. Almost made me want to rent a bungalow until I seen you let rowdy riffraff in." She gave me a blank stare. I wasn't sure, but I think she just insulted me. I ended up putting that in the "she's having a bad day" file and decided to continue with why I was happy to see her. "Yeah, that. What do you do?" I asked, smiling, and shrugged off her insult. "Anyways, I understand you're doing a piece on the drought and possible shutdown of the park?" "Who told you?" She gave me the side eye. "No one," I said with wide open eyes. "I heard you say something to Corbin, and then the mayor stepped in. Both of them are trying to stop me from doing this article, but I just can't do that. I have a following of campers, and they take my opinion very seriously. If I continue to promote Daniel Boone National Park here in Normal, it'll make me less credible with my readers." Her brows rose and her jaw set. "How so?" I questioned, so I could fully understand what she meant. "I'm guessing those are deposits from reservations that were made yesterday?" She looked at the deposit bag I was holding, then drew her eyes back up to me. "A few," I admitted. "I'm not asking you to tell me, but I assume you might have an opening, say," her nose scrunched, "a month from now?" She put her hand out. "Though I'm well aware you've been booked for months, but just as an example." "Okay." I took a few steps closer to the teller window as the customers ahead of me finished with their business. I was only 2 away from Ann. "They come here and spend all that money to bring their families on a nice vacation to Happy Trails, but can't do anything in the national park because it's closed." She emphasized closed. "Now, some of these people work hard all year long for their vacation and save up. You're going to tell me that it's okay for the mayor to cover that up?" "I think she's wanting to think the best and hoping it won't happen because it can affect the economy." I didn't give the mayor that much credit, but I was interested in hearing Allison's rebuttal. Allison's eyes narrowed. "She's only interested in getting people here so the economy is good for merchants like you to keep her in office." "Hey, Mae, can I help you?" Ann Doherty drew her hands up to her face and used a fingernail file on her nails. I looked back at Allison. Haphazardly, I gave the deposit bag to Ann. She yammered on about the Gucci bag I'd given her as a bribe during a murder investigation. Her words were just filling the extra space in my head that wasn't currently occupied by what Allison had just told me. Even though, I hate to admit it, maybe Dottie Swaggart was right about me asking Hank Sharp. If, and only if, what Allison said was true, and there was an imminent shutdown due to a drought, then I was going to have to come up with a plan to add some fun activities to the campground during the shutdown so tourists wouldn't cancel their reservations. They had to be amazing events. But what? Yeah, thanks." I waved goodbye to Ann after she handed me the deposit slip. The heavy door of the bank seemed even harder to push as I flung it open, nearly knocking down Helen Pyle, the owner of Cuticles. Cuticles was the local nail and hair salon that everyone used but me. "Mae West, how the heck are you?" She pulled the dark glasses off her face. She took a couple of chomps of her gum, and she looked me over. "I'd sure love to get my hands on that hair of yours." "If I thought you'd be able to tame this mess, I'd let you." I'd seen what had come out of Cuticle's salon, and let's just say it wasn't the same treatment my fancy salon in New York City had. It was all Normal had, and the way I seen it was if I needed something besides pulling my hair up, back, flat ironing the heck out of it, or simply letting it spring around, I'd go to another town. "Tame it? It'll be purring like a kitten after I'm done with you." She cackled, and I found myself standing on the sidewalk of downtown Normal with Helen's fingers plunged plumb down to my scalp. Purr. She made kitten claws at my face. Oh gosh, I wouldn't do that to you and take up your time. I was beginning to feel like I just stepped in it, and by it, I meant doo-doo. It takes hours for me to go to the salon, and it just so happens that I've got a cancellation tomorrow at noon. Lucky you, someone is going to be out of town for the holiday weekend. She sparkled in the autumn sun with her bright orange lipstick and orange short-sleeved top that was bedazzled with different-colored jewels and all tucked up in her mom jeans that were pulled clear up to the bottom of her boobs. I looked at the orange-tinted hair that was piled up in a mess on top of her head and almost started to cry right there in front of her. I wasn't good at telling people no, especially since I'd tried so hard to give back to normal and all its shops, and that included cuticles. Plus, I didn't want to spend a Saturday trying to get my hair tame. And we can catch up on Fifi. I do miss that little girl. She had done Fifi's nails on a regular basis. Yep, you heard that right. Tammy Jo Bentley used to get Fifi's nails and hair done weekly. Let's just say I've yet to have them done, and Fifi didn't seem to mind a bit. I've got to run, but I'll see you at noon tomorrow. She gave me the toodaloo wave, leaving me speechless, which was hard to do. As if I didn't have enough to worry about. Now I had to figure out how to get out of that appointment. Then the smell of cinnamon and sugar circled around my head, putting a smile on my face, and Helen in the back of my mind. A donut to hold me over until my hike with Ty was exactly what I needed. There was no way I'd planned a big breakfast this morning because the last thing I wanted to do was get into the woods with Ty and have to go number 2. That wouldn't be romantic, so I'd only had the coffee, but a donut did smell good. Christine Watson, owner of the Cookie Crumble Bakery, was just a light of sunshine. The freckles dotted along her face made her cute as a button. She had her brown hair tucked up into a hairnet, and she still looked adorable. May, did you get the delivery this morning? She looked like she was surprised to see me. My sister was supposed to deliver them. Please tell me she did, she begged with a panicky voice. Yes, she did, and let me tell you, they are a hit. My eyes scanned down the glass case where she had trays of donuts. Actually, I was at the bank and I walked out. Instead of getting a big whiff of fresh fall air, I got cinnamon. Really? There was delight on her face. That's wonderful. She clapped her hands. I just took out the cinnamon rolls and I bet you'd like one. One? Give me 2. I held up 2 fingers. You grew up in Normal, right? I did. She pulled a spatula from her drawer of tools and slipped 2 of the cinnamon rolls in a to-go box. These are fresh out of the oven, and I don't even have them in the case yet. She handed the box to me. I put my hand in my purse to get my wallet. No, those are on me. You have no idea how many people come in here at night in need of an after-dinner treat. They tell me they are staying at Happy Trails and tasted the treats the Cookie Crumble put in the recreation center. I've gotten so much business from you. Thank you. I gave a grateful smile. Business is what I was going to ask you about. What could I possibly do to help you? You've been thriving, she gushed and wiped her hands down her apron. She took out a metal tray and began placing the cinnamon rolls on it. It's my understanding that tourism slows down when the park is shut down due to a drought. I put the box up to my nose and smelled it. My mouth watered. Slows down? You mean stops? All business literally stops when there's a shutdown. She slid the glass door of the counter open and placed the cinnamon buns next to a tray of sugar cookies shaped like Kentucky. A blue dot on them represented the location of our small town. Is something going on? She popped her head over the top of the counter. Her jaw dropped. There was some talk at the party yesterday about some sort of drought. And I just wanted to know if you'd been through one, since you've lived here all your life. I wasn't sure how to make her feel better, because I could tell she was very upset at the prospect of it. It's just gossip. I waved my hand at her. You know gossip around here. Thanks for the cinnamon rolls. I had to get out of there before I made a bigger mess. I wasn't good at this gossip thing, or at trying to figure out how I could save Happy Trails from a shutdown if I had to. Before I even left the cookie crumble, I heard Christine telling someone about what I'd said. I turned around, and she was huddled in the corner of the bakery with the phone up to her ear. "A shutdown," she had whispered into the phone. "Mae West. She owns the campground. She should know. I think she's dating the detective," she muttered under her breath. "I thought we were making a cookie for the mayor so we could get some of that money. This isn't good." She looked up and gave me a wave goodbye when she caught me looking at her from the corners of her eyes. "Great. Now the town thinks I'm dating Hank," I moaned, wondering who she was telling that I said there was a shutdown coming. I shoved out the door. "This isn't going to ruin my hike with Ty," I proclaimed over the box of the cinnamon rolls. That might not have ruined my morning, but the Normal Gazette front page headline blinked like a big signal from the metal box newspaper stand. The big glass window showcased the front page, and it read, "Wish for rain, soon, or all tourism will stop in Normal due to drought shutdown." Oh my gosh! I honestly couldn't believe Allison's article had made it on the front page of the Normal Gazette. Any other day, there was a happy photo of a tourist doing some touristy thing. I patted around the inside of my purse for some change to throw into the machine, but came up empty-handed. It was one of those things the debit card had changed for me. I rarely carried cash, and never coins. When I glanced up, the laundry club was the first store I'd seen. Queenie will be all over this. I snapped my finger and trotted on down to see the gals. Just like I'd predicted, Queenie was sitting at the card table just inside of the door, with the paper snapped open and her nose stuck right up in it. There were a few customers in there doing their laundry, but I didn't pay attention to how many, since I was on a mission to get a paper. Some of them were sitting on the dryer watching the television, while a few more were at the puzzle table trying to piece together the 5,000-piece killer Bats had picked up at a garage sale. I wasn't so sure all the pieces were there, though she said the owners told her they were. Well, I was told that Happy Trails Campground was a thriving community before I had a real chance to see it, and we all knew how that went. "Queenie," I said in a hushed voice when she didn't even bother to look up to see who'd come in the door. There was a dingy bell, and she never missed a good ding. "Queenie?" She lifted up her head and peered over the paper, her eyes big. "I was hoping it wasn't you I saw coming down the street. I was praying it wasn't you coming in here when the bell dinged. But here you are." She slowly dragged the paper down. "What?" I looked at the paper. The tension gathered in my forehead, right about my eyes. "What does the paper say?" My eyes lowered. "Well," she hesitated, "let's just say your rowdy bachelor made the paper." She folded the paper inside out to where the full article Allison had written was located, and more than half the page was a chronological photo spread of the incident with William and Ranger Corbin Ashbrook. The last photo was me dragging William away. Grr! My teeth gnashed together and my nose snarled. "I'm gonna kill Allison!" I grabbed the newspaper and plunged my fist down to my side. "There's no shutdown. She's single-handedly going to turn away tourists with this article." Just as I sucked in a deep breath, Mayor Courtney Mackenzie was crossing the street from Dieter's Feed and Seed to the grassy median that was located in the middle of the one-way streets of downtown. "What's happening there?" I asked. "Something about the cookie crumble making a cookie named after the mayor that's going to be released today." Queenie shrugged and tried to tug the paper out of my grip, but that wasn't happening. "Is that Allison Gilbert I see?" I leaned a little closer to the window and didn't even comment on the special cookie Christine and her sister had made. "What are you thinking?" Queenie questioned. I gave her a quick glance, and without putting too much thought into it, I bolted out the door and ran across the street. "Allison? Yoo-hoo! Allison!" I yelled and flailed the paper above my head. "I've got a bone to pick with you." Allison bit her lip and looked away. I could tell she was trying to figure out a getaway route. "I can run faster," I screamed when she started to fast walk into the crowd that was gathered in front of the amphitheater. The grassy median was in the middle of 2 streets along downtown. It was its own little park, with an amphitheater, picnic benches, a covered space for reunions or get-togethers, and plenty of trees. It was a perfect place to host celebrations, and apparently there was a cookie celebration today that was crowded with people. I was well aware that I'd gotten some attention with my demonic screaming and all the flailing I was doing, but when I saw Allison take off, I knew she did wrong. "Leave me alone!" Allison stood cornered in the covered shelter, her eyes as big as a beach ball. "Don't come any closer to me! You act like I'm going to harm you," I glared at her. "Or is it your guilty conscience? I don't care if you throw me under the bus, but Happy Trails? You could destroy the very thing that got this economy going." Yeah, I was feeling that whole mama bear saying about how you can talk about me, but not my kids thing. I never really understood that until this very moment. There was no other way for me to get the word out. If there's a drought, there's money in the budget to get some supplies to the area. She spoke of something I knew nothing about. "I proposed it at the last chamber meeting." "The last chamber meeting was the luncheon for businesses," I reminded her. I didn't go because I was busy holding down the office while Dottie took the day off. The luncheons were casual, and nothing was discussed there, so it wasn't a big deal to miss. Or so I thought. I know it was. I appealed to the businesses, but Mayor Mackenzie shut me down, and fast. Allison's shoulders softened and pulled down away from her ears. She didn't seem to be in defense mode anymore. "I knew they'd listen to you if you said something, and this is how I wanted to get your attention, because you sure didn't say anything at your party yesterday when I yelled it out." "It didn't go unheard," I told her. "I had to take care of the drunk guy and get him out before he ruined the party." "Well, I know you haven't been here before in a shutdown, but it's not pretty." She tilted her head to the side, her brows rose, and she leaned in and said, "The wrong kind of people flock to the parks when they shut down because they know there's not a ranger on duty, and this lets them do anything they want." She huffed. "One thing leads to another. Fires are set, parks are burnt down. It's a mess." "Exactly how can I get their attention?" I asked, because what she said couldn't happen. "You single-handedly helped the economy. This will take it down. Trust me." She sucked in a big, deep breath. Her eyes slid past my shoulder. I turned my head to see what she was staring at. It was Mayor Mackenzie, smiling and shaking hands. "It'll all come out soon." There was a tone in her voice that told me this was something much more than just a shutdown due to a drought. When I turned back around, Allison had somehow slipped away without me even noticing. Unfortunately, Detective Hank Sharp was coming my way. When we made eye contact, I knew I couldn't do a Houdini act like Allison. Well, if it's not Mae West. There was a glint in his green eyes. He held out a napkin with a couple of cookies on it. The napkin had the Cookie Crumble logo on it. The logo looked like a doily, with Cookie Crumble in the middle, the outline of a cupcake below it, and the outline of a donut below it. "I'll share." And of course I took it. "Thanks." I bit down into it, knowing this was just an opening for the reason he really walked over to see me. "Why are you being nice?" "Are you saying that I'm not nice?" His eyes lowered, the fall sunlight beaming down on his nicely combed black hair and casting a mysterious shadow down his face. "I'm just saying that you're being extra nice sharing your cookie." It was suspicious, not that we didn't like each other. It was that our paths seemed to cross only when there was, well, a murder. "Is someone dead?" "What?" He laughed. "If there was, do you think—" "Okay, what do you want?" I stopped him because it wasn't a good idea to get into a fussing match with him. "What were you and Allison talking about?" he finally asked. "So you're spying on me now?" I asked, and shoved the rest of the cookie in my mouth, biting down into a small peanut butter morsel. Delicious. A satisfying sigh escaped me.
She's been stirring up a lot of trouble around here lately. I've gotten a couple of complaints, and I just like to keep order." He shrugged and ate the rest of his cookie. "We were discussing me, Happy Trails, and the beautiful fall weather we are having." I took a deep inhale through my nose and released it as a smile crossed my face. He didn't appear to be too amused. "I mean, these 70-degree temps, the leaves on the trees are like a painted picture, and the birds are alive with the sound of music." "Okay, Julie Andrews." He wiped his mouth off with his napkin and put it in his pocket. "You know Julie Andrews?" I admit to being a tad bit shocked. "Hasn't everyone seen that goofy musical?" He shrugged and strolled past me. "If you don't tell me what she's up to, then I'll just have to keep digging myself," he nonchalantly said over his shoulder. "Isn't it illegal to be checking on someone when they've not done a single thing wrong?" I couldn't keep my mouth shut, because I knew the mayor had probably put him up to coming over to me because she was staring right at us. Now I was even more curious as to what Allison knew. My phone chirped a text, bringing me out of my thoughts. I pulled it from my pocket. "Ty, are you here? I'm a little early." "Crap," I gasped when I noticed the time on my phone glowed. It was close to 12:45 p.m. I had 15 minutes to get back to the campground before our 1 p.m. hike date. Quickly, I texted back that I was on my way and would be there shortly. "What?" Hank asked with a deep-set curiosity in his eyes. "Nothing. I've got to get back to work." I didn't even bother telling him about the real reason I had to get back. I didn't feel like listening to his smart-aleck remarks about Ty. Thank goodness the campground was just a quick 5-minute drive from downtown. When I pulled in, Dottie and Ty were sitting on top of one of the picnic tables near the office. Instantly, anything I was thinking about with the mayor, Hank, and Allison melted away. In fact, his amazing smile made me melt like a marshmallow being held over the campfire. "Hey there," I rolled down my window. "You going my way?" "Nope. Just gonna sit here and wait until William Henson shows up." Dottie took a deep inhale of her cigarette. "What?" I threw the gear in park and jumped out of the car. "What's up with him?" "William." She duck-billed her lips, and as if there were a string attached to her eyebrows, they lifted to heaven. "Apparently, after you tucked him in yesterday, he took off. The guys said they waited for him all night because they were headed to the city for the titty bar." By city, Dottie meant Lexington, and by titty bar, well, that's a little self-explanatory. "They went without him. Got back this morning, and he still hasn't been there." "Did you call the ranger station?" I asked. "Yep, I talked to Corbin. He said he'd be out. Over there's his Jeep." She pointed the cigarette towards the tree line where he'd taken the liberty to park in the grass at the front of a trail. "Not sure what time he got here, because I was busy distributing the firewood for tonight's cookout." She referred to the event where all the campers make a fire and cook something different for all the other campers to walk around and taste. It's a lot of fun, but it won't be tonight if William didn't show up. I gnawed the inside of my jaw and looked between the Jeep and Ty. "I know what you're thinking." Ty pushed off the top of the picnic table to stand. He had on a pair of navy shorts, white t-shirt, and hiking boots. "We can go on the trail. I know you're itching to help." "You're the best." I turned back to the car. "Do you want to go with me so I can get my clothes changed, or do you want to stay here?" "I'll go with you so I can see Fifi." He was a sucker for her. They'd instantly bonded when I was babysitting her before she came to live with me full-time. "Ready?" "Yeah." I forced a smile. There was something deep down that really bugged me about William missing. Before we got into the car, I scanned the tree line and the entrance to the Red Fox Trail, the trail William's friend thought he'd hiked. "You're thinking something," Ty said after he shut the passenger car door. "I'm worried about my camper, who is all of a sudden missing." I put the car in drive and drove around the lake. I want to stop by the bungalow and check on the guys. I feel like it's my duty since I'm the owner. The bungalows were nestled in the far back of the campground, in a whole bunch of huge oak trees. Corbin will find him. He's probably passed out along the trail somewhere, and his friends have no clue where they are or what they're doing.
Ty didn't make me feel better, but he was right. I'd been living here about 4 months, and I barely knew my way around the campground, much less the trails. It was something that came with time and experience. These guys truly didn't look like hikers or campers with their fancy equipment and brand new hiking boots. "Hey there," I hollered out the window of the Escort to get their attention. "They don't look too worried," I said when I noticed they appeared to be having a liquid lunch, and I didn't mean milk or soft drinks.
"They're just celebrating,"
Ty snickered. "Without the groom," I sighed and opened the door. "Have you heard from William?"
"No."
The one who was hanging out the window when they first pulled into Happy Trails answered me while the rest just looked at me. "I'm Mae, the owner." I stuck my hand out.
"I'm Jameson."
He shook my hand with a very solid grip.
"I'm the best man. I called Penelope to see if she's heard from him, but she hasn't."
"Is Penelope his fiancée?" I asked. He nodded. "Did he have a cell phone?"
"Yeah, it's in there charging."
He pointed to the bungalow. The page of the paper with William and Corbin fighting in the newspaper was taped on the front door of the bungalow.
"We went out looking for him, but decided we'd better tell your manager, Dottie, instead of us getting lost."
To clarify, I had to get all the facts. When you guys got back from hiking, he wasn't here. Or he was here but left?
"Not here. He left the trail because he cut his hand. He was coming back to get a bandage, and according to the newspaper, he got into a fight with that cop."
He smiled.
"William is always creating chaos."
"I see that you've decided to post the newspaper article on the door?" My brows lifted.
"Yeah, we're going to take it with us to show everyone at the reception during our portion of the speeches."
He shrugged with a laugh.
"We think it'll be funny."
"Yeah, well, I don't want any of you back on the trails. Got it, Jameson?" I didn't bother waiting for him to answer me. "Or you're going to be responsible for this group. Until we find William, you're locked in right here." I stomped my foot in the grass.
"Yes, ma'am."
He saluted me.
"He'll show up. He always does."
"What does that mean?" I asked.
"You know."
He winked. Chills ran up my spine.
"Getting married, tying a last notch on his belt, probably with a local."
Let's hope that's the case. I couldn't believe them. They were awful friends. I turned around and headed back to the car and slammed the door when I got in. They are awful. They think he's having a last fling, a one-night stand with a local.
"He could be,"
Ty said. "Really?" I gripped the wheel and slowly turned into the concrete pad where my camper was located. "That's terrible."
"I'm not saying it's something to be proud of. I'm just saying that it's truly possible. I know guys who did that before they got married."
He looked over at me.
"Guys stink."
"I know," I said sarcastically. "The last thing we need for publicity is if a camper goes missing on top of the shutdown." We got out of the car. I threw the flamingo keyring over the top of the car while I got the deposit slip and bag from the back seat. I completely forgot to put those in the office when I first pulled in. He already had the door unlocked and Fifi out to potty.
"Poor baby."
Ty used his best baby voice. "She looks miserable," he noted. "She should go into labor any day now." I bent down when she heard me and waddled towards me as fast as her little legs would carry that big belly with her tail wagging. "I think I might take her to get her groomed after she has the babies."
"A new mom does like to get pampered,"
Ty joked. He walked over.
"Why don't you go on in and get changed? I'll watch her."
"You're the best." I took him up on his offer and couldn't help but think if this hike was going to lead to a romantic kiss, a moment I'd been dreaming of. After I dressed in a Happy Trails short-sleeved shirt and a pair of shorts, I laced up my hiking boots that were as new as the bachelor party boys'. Quickly, I sprayed myself with bug spray and refilled Fifi's bowl with some extra kibble. Little Mama was going to need all the energy her little body could muster up while in delivery.
"Ready?"
Ty walked in, carrying Fifi. She was panting.
"I wish she'd have these babies."
Me too. I reached into the cabinet underneath the sink and took a treat from the box. Sweet baby girl. She snatched it out of my fingers before Ty even put her on the ground. I'd say she's happy. We watched as she gobbled up the treat and made her way over to the bowl. Let's go.
Got the keys.
He dangled the flamingo keyring from his finger.
I thought we could just walk down.
Sounds good. I left the deposit bag on the counter so I wouldn't forget to take it to the office later. Even though it was my afternoon off, I never really was off. Somehow, I'd always made it back to the office at some point. I wasn't complaining. Life as the owner of Happy Trails was a pretty simple life. Well, as long as all the lots were rented. The bungalows were just a bonus. And with William missing and a drought, I wasn't ready to give up the simple life. We talked about his dad and his brothers. His dad had really cut back at the diner. It was Ty's younger brother's senior year. His dad had been real involved with him and all the stuff that went along with graduating high school, plus preparing him for his last baseball season with the high school by getting him into batting lessons. Then there was his youngest brother, Timmy. Ron had joined the PTA at the elementary school. I didn't know much about his family, and I loved hearing him talk about them. I truly don't take advantage of living here. I couldn't get enough of the fresh air that the Daniel Boone National Forest gave to the world. I mean, smell that. We stopped. I put my hands on my hips and lifted my chin in the air, taking a deep breath. My lungs expanded and released, leaving a long, deep sigh as my lips curled into a smile.
I smell the pines a lot during this time of the year.
He held out his canteen for me to take a drink.
Keep hydrated. Even though it's shaded and feels really cool, your body is working harder than you think.
I took a drink and handed it back to him. Thank you. I gulped when our fingers touched. He entwined his with mine and tugged me closer to him. Our eyes met, and my heart rendered tenderness in his gaze. The prolonged anticipation of kissing him was almost unbearable.
May I kiss you?
Did he just ask for permission to kiss me? My mind reeled. He was a true Southern gentleman. I couldn't think of anything, I said, before he bent his head down, his mouth covering mine. He deepened the kiss, showing his eager side, and that excited me. It had been a long time since I'd kissed someone. His lips demanded more and more time of mine, as his hand drew down my face and around my neck. He dropped my hand and put it up to my face with his other hand, cradling my face. My body tingled all over, or maybe it was the fact I needed to pee-pee. I was willing to hold it until this amazing first kiss was over. There was a crack of some branches, pulling us apart. We stood still when we noticed a 5-point buck gallop out of the park and cross our path. Beautiful, I watched in amazement.
Yes, you are.
Ty pulled me close to him as we watched the buck bounce away. Let's finish our hike, I suggested so we could get done and back to the camper. I had other things on my mind. So we can get back to my place. Ty was hiking ahead of me. He'd picked up the pace. He was so cute. He would kick sticks or rocks off the trail so I wouldn't trip. He was very aware of those little things that I'd never thought of.
You okay?
He turned around and asked when he noticed I wasn't walking as fast as he was. I've got to go potty. My brows frowned.
1 or 2?
He held up his fingers. 1, I yelled. It echoed.
Just go right there behind the tree, not too far off the trail, and watch out for poison ivy. And hurry, we're almost done.
He smiled.
Then we can go to your place.
Just to check on Fifi, I joked.
Yep.
He snapped his fingers.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
I bet you were, I teased and headed back into the wooded area, watching my step. I didn't want to step on any critters, like a snake.
I'm lucky I didn't have sisters. My parents and I used to hike all of these trails.
I could hear him opening up about his family. He rarely talked about his mom.
You would have loved my mom. She would have loved you. I mean, you're really girly, but you can hang with the guys when you want to.
The more he talked, the harder it was for me to concentrate on the task at hand. I started to get in position, with a tree trunk against my back to steady me. Peeing on myself didn't sound like a good thing. "Come on, Mae," I encouraged myself out of this stage fright. "You've got—" I looked down at the toes of my boots. "What on earth?" I leaned a little more forward to try to get a better look. "OMG! OMG!" I jumped up and took off running while pulling my shorts back up. "OMG!" I continued to scream and dropped when I made it back to the trail.
"What is wrong? Did you step or pee on a critter?"
Ty's face lit up in delight.
"No!"
I gasped and heaved.
"Did something bite you?"
He bent down to look at my leg.
"Call Hank Sharp!"
I couldn't stop screaming.
"I nearly peed on Ranger Corbin Ashbrook."
5. The minutes between the time Ty called 911 and when the first police officer arrived on the scene felt like forever, when in reality, the sound of sirens was about 5 minutes after he'd called. Ty had sat me down on a rock on the other side of the trail. He stood next to me with his arms folded as the police officer the dispatcher had sent surveyed the area.
"What on earth is going on around here?"
Dottie had brought the officer up to meet us on the trail. She was the second person Ty had called because we needed her to show the officer where we were, and she knew these trails.
"I'm not sure."
My eyes blinked several times. I rubbed my hands vigorously together and put them between my knees.
"How on earth did you find him?" she asked.
"I had to pee," I whispered, and looked down the trail after we'd heard some heavy footsteps.
"Do you think he had a heat stroke?"
Dottie asked. "It's not that hot out," I said, "but I don't know. Maybe a heart attack or something." The rustling of the trees overhead, the cracking branches, and the sounds of the forest played like an eerie tune you'd hear in a scary movie. Goosebumps covered my legs.
"Are you cold?"
Ty asked and bent down to my level. "No, I have a bad feeling." It was something I wished I could put out of my head. The fact that Corbin, who knew these trails as well as Dottie, is dead. "Has William shown back up?" I asked.
"Nope."
Dottie's lips made an exaggerated pop. "Where is William Hinson?" I asked.
"Very good question. I've been wondering that myself."
The heavy footsteps stopped. Hank Sharp stood over me like one of the big oaks, his green eyes hiding behind a pair of Wayfarer sunglasses. His black hair was combed neatly to the side and slicked with just the right amount of gel. He wore a two-piece black suit with a blue button-down. His gun snapped in the holster around his waist.
"His fiancée has been at the office all morning, waiting to file a missing person report."
We all looked at him. Ty stood back up. The two men had a sketchy past that I'd not been able to uncover. The tension could be felt between the two men. Luckily, the sounds of more footsteps ascended the trail. I stood. Ty took my arm as though he were helping me balance. Hank's sideways glance didn't go unnoticed. He pulled his glasses off, and his eyes were fixed on Ty's hand around my forearm.
"It's probably the coroner. I've got the trail blocked off, and the officer called to report that Corbin is dead."
Hank shifted his weight to the front of his feet while he pulled a notebook out of his back pocket.
"The officer also told me that you found Corbin. Is that correct?"
He opened the suit coat and took a pen from his inside pocket, clicking the point out.
"Yes."
My voice was weak. I cleared my dry throat and swallowed. "It was me." Hank's face wore a not again sort of in disbelief look.
"Mae, it appears the only times you and I interact is when we get into sticky situations. For instance, this morning when you and Allison were having that heated conversation you didn't want to tell me about."
He flipped through the notebook and started to write in it. It was best to keep my mouth shut until he started in on his many questions. I'd seen this dog and pony show a couple of times. It was during those times that I'd gotten myself in more trouble instead of less.
"You saw him today?"
Ty asked.
"You were almost late and texted me you were at the bank. I talked to her during the unveiling of the Cookie Crumbles cookie honoring the mayor."
Hank had a smirk on his face.
I would have went with you.
Ty was so sweet to have offered. It was by chance that I was in the area. I wasn't in the mood to explain to either of them why I was downtown. Ty's nostrils flared and his jaw tensed.
You want to tell me what happened?
Hank had made enough waves with me and Ty for the moment. I couldn't help but think he'd enjoyed every minute of getting Ty's goat at my expense.
We were hiking and...
Ty started to say.
You two were hiking?
Hank gestured between me and Ty with his pen.
Together? Yes, together. A date.
Ty's face was stern and his jaw set as he glared at Hank.
I'm sorry.
Hank stopped the interview and looked at me.
Was the text you got from Ty? Because I thought you said you had to get back to work.
I glared at him with no answer. He was really baiting Ty, and I wasn't going to help reel him in.
Go ahead and tell me what happened here while you were on your hiking date,
Hank said.
And Mae,
Ty started again, but Hank interrupted him again.
I'd like Mae to tell me.
Hank put his hand up in front of Ty's face, but his eyes were on me.
Mae, you found the body, correct?
Corbin. His name is Corbin. I didn't want to refer to him as a body. I let out a slight gasp and threw my hand over my mouth while the coroner and his deputy packed up the black body bag with Corbin in it.
It's okay.
Ty pulled me to his chest.
I'm here. Mae,
Hank called my name.
Do you want to do this at the station so there's not so many distractions?
I wanted to believe he meant the crime scene, but by the look on his face, he clearly meant Ty. No, I'm sorry. I licked my lips and gained my composure. I had to tinkle.
You need to use the bathroom?
Hank asked. No, I had to pee when I found Corbin. It reminded me that I never went to the bathroom, bringing it to my attention that I still had to pee.
You peed on him?
Hank's brows lifted.
Is that necessary?
Ty spoke up.
It is if her DNA is on him. Yes, Ty. Let me do my job, or you can go on back to your hike without her.
Hank's tone was stern. No, I didn't end up going to the bathroom because when I looked down, I saw his hand. I screamed and ran back to Ty. I sucked in a deep breath, starting to feel a little more like myself after the men carrying Corbin's body down the trail had disappeared around the curve.
You didn't try to see what happened or touch him?
He asked. No. It was better to stick with single words.
Did you touch him?
He looked at Ty. Ty stood there with a blank look on his face.
Did you touch him?
Hank repeated. His voice escalated with an edge of attitude.
Oh, so you're talking to me now?
Ty questioned in a smart-aleck tone. The men stood facing each other. Hank cleared his throat.
Yes, Ty. This is part of the investigation. There is a man dead. I need to know if you contaminated the scene.
His attitude shifted to at least tolerable and less of being a jerk.
When Mae started screaming, I walked her way, figuring it was a snake or something. She was very upset and said it was Corbin. I did walk over there and looked behind the tree. There was a body, and I didn't need to know any more than that. I didn't even see his face. I noticed the Green Ranger jacket and immediately called 911. After I called dispatch, I called Dottie to let her know that we found a body on Red Fox Trail.
Ty glanced over Hank's shoulder when an officer approached from behind him. The officer whispered something into Hank's ear. Hank gave a few nods, sending the officer back. What was that about? I asked. Hank looked at me like I had no business asking him. Then he focused back on Ty.
Why did you call Dottie?
Hank wanted to know. The sound of crunching leaves, breaking sticks, and low murmurs sucked up any tranquility the forest usually offered in the late afternoon.
I wanted her to show the officers where we were on the trail when they got here.
Ty was so smart. I'd never thought of calling her or staying with the body. I'd have hightailed it out of there if it weren't for Ty.
I had Mae sit down and calm down. Not that she ain't seen a dead body or three,
Dottie muttered under her breath. When she caught me staring at her with my nose snarled, she laughed.
If we can't laugh about it, we'd be crying about it. Did you see or talk to Corbin when you two were—" his chest heaved up and down, "hiking?"
No. I shook my head and looked at Ty for confirmation. He shook his head no, too. We decided to take this trail because we wanted to see if we could find William Hinson before I reported him missing, but apparently his fiancée is in town now.
"She is?"
Dottie asked.
"Yes, she's been down at the station filling out reports and giving us photos from her phone. It's not like him not to text her or call her a few times an hour."
Hank appeared to be reading from his notes.
"I see that Corbin's truck was parked at the entrance of the trail. Do you know why he was here?"
"Dottie?" I pointed to her.
"William Hinson, one of the campers renting a bungalow, is missing, and I reported it to the ranger station,"
she sternly told Hank.
"William Hinson," he repeated and flipped a few pages back in his notebook. "What bungalow is he in?"
Hank asked. 5. I held up my hand like I was some child and quickly jerked it down. I curled up on my tiptoes to get a gander at the notes Hank was writing, because it was more than just writing the number 5. He gave me the side eye and drew the little pad to his chest. "I did go and see them before we went hiking. I wanted to get some information for myself, firsthand," I said, making Hank pop his head up in curiosity. I knew that would get his attention. "They said they went to the girly bar to see if he'd gone there early because they'd had plans." Hank and Ty gave each other what I'd call a guy look, and even though there was tension between them, it did make them smile. "Seriously?" I groaned. "Why are you asking all these questions? Was Corbin murdered?"
"When the officer came over here, upon inspection of the body, Corbin didn't have any visible signs of foul play."
It was news I didn't want to hear. A primitive grief overcame me, and I sat back down to get my wits about me before I passed out.
"Detective!"
the officer yelled from the crime scene with something blue dangling from his fingers.
"Listen, you don't need to hang around here."
He flipped the notebook shut and shoved it in his pocket.
"I'll stop by and interview each of you after I get the crime scene cleared."
Dottie, Ty, and I stood there as Hank hurried back to the crime scene.
"What do you think that is?"
Dottie asked.
"It looks like a sweatshirt,"
Ty said, and put his hand out to help me stand back up.
"Come on, there's nothing we can do here."
On the way down the trail, my mind was jumbled, and all the words started to tumble out of my mouth. "This is our trail. Technically, I didn't own it, but the start of the Red Fox Trail was on my property. It was my job to maintain it. Allison will get a hold of this. With this on top of this morning's article, we'll have 1,000,000 cancellations." The silence of Ty and Dottie said a lot to me. They knew I was right. "This means one thing." I abruptly stopped and turned around, Dottie nearly knocking into me. Both of their eyes were big and round.
"Don't even say."
Ty slowly shook his head. "I've got to figure out who did this before it gets out." I turned back around. "Where the hell is William Hinson?"
"That's the $1,000,000 question right now."
Dottie hurried alongside of me and pulled me close.
"I think it's a great idea for us to look into this."
"Us?" I asked.
No, this isn't a good idea."
Ty pooh-poohed the idea from behind us. I squeezed Dottie's arm and smiled. "Okay, dear," I said in a teasing voice.
"Dear? Great. You're not listening to me."
Ty tried to hurry alongside of us, but he wasn't quick enough because we'd reached the beginning of the trail, where there were police officers all over the campground. 6. The campground was crawling with officers, and cop cars were scattered all over. Some of the officers were sitting on the bales of hay Dottie had situated around the campground for extra seating. The leaves on the trees swayed from the late afternoon fall breeze that was coming in from the park, a few falling down. Soon all of the trees would be bare, and signs of winter would be on the way. Soon the pumpkins and gourds nestled in baskets at the end of corn stalks would be long gone, and we'd be gearing up for the campers who love to celebrate the winter season, hiking in colder temperatures. Today brought on a sadness that seemed to fit the falling and bone-chilling temperatures. There were a few campfires already started, and the smell of wood burning took over the smell of death lingering in the air.
"Did you find William?" Jameson ran over with a frantic look on his face. "No one will tell me anything. They brought out a body in a black bag."
His face went pale. "No, it wasn't William. It was the ranger that he got into a fight with yesterday," I told him as I watched the door of a police cruiser open in the distance. A petite blonde in white cropped skinny pants, a pink cardigan, and pearls jumped out.
"Jameson!"
she screamed, with one hand on her heart and one hand waving at him.
"Penelope!"
A heavy sigh escaped him. Penelope? I watched as the two of them met in the middle, hanging on to each other.
"Who's that?"
Dottie jerked the old cigarette case with the snap top out of her bra and had lit the thing and was sucking on it before I could even answer. Penelope, William's fiancée. I couldn't help but notice Jameson's hands were in a place that made it appear they were not just consoling each other about their missing friend/fiancée. Ty had walked over to another police officer he must know. I could hear them exchanging pleasantries about family members.
"No wonder William was tying one on before his wedding,"
Dottie said, a puff of smoke coming out with each word.
"None of Harrison's friends ever consoled me like that when Harrison died."
Dottie rarely spoke about her deceased husband, and I always felt it wasn't my place to ask, but she had just pushed the door wide open for me to walk through. "Harrison went missing?" I asked.
No, but still, his hands are a little too close to Miss Priss's rump, and she appears not to mind."
Dottie and I turned to watch a little more. "Do you think William is dead?" Granted, I had never let that cross my mind until now. The situation was getting more and more serious by the minute.
"He's either dead or in deep hiding."
Dottie brought the cigarette up to her mouth and took another puff.
"From killing Ranger Ashbrook."
"You don't think?" My jaw dropped. "I mean, I never thought for a second that William killed Corbin until you just put it in my head."
"Mae West,"
she tisked, dropping the cig on the ground and snuffing it out with the tip of her shoe.
"The minute Hank started asking questions about whereabouts and bringing in evidence, it became clear he was suspicious. After all, Corbin Ashbrook is a 14-year veteran of the force, and Red Fox Trail isn't the hardest hike he's ever done. Immediately, that darn Allison's article popped right on in my head and been lingering there since."
She rolled her finger around her short red hair.
"Here she is, snapping away, fitting in like all us normal people, blending in with the crowd."
Dottie had already put Allison on trial and come back with a murder verdict before we even knew if this was a murder. Her analysis was good, though. "Gosh," I gnawed on the edge of my lip. "She did say she'd been investigating something big, and it was about to come out. I wonder if—" Dottie lifted her chin towards Penelope and Jameson. They appeared to be walking towards us. "I wouldn't say she's the only suspect if Corbin was murdered," I whispered so they couldn't hear me as they got closer. "What about their friend, Mr. William Hinson?"
"It doesn't look good that he had a fight with Corbin and is all of a sudden missing."
My brow rose. I hated to think Allison would kill someone, but I'd learned real fast the motive for murder was sometimes about something very ridiculous. Not that a shutdown due to a drought was something to just roll your eyes for a business owner. But why did Allison take such a big interest in it when the newspaper wouldn't be affected too much by a shutdown? It was definitely something to look into. "Hey, Allison," I greeted her. "News travels fast. I have a police scanner alert app on my phone so I can get to a scene quicker." She snapped a few more photos. "What can you tell me?"
"Nothing. We can't tell you nothing."
Dottie was quick to answer.
"Here they come," she whispered about Penelope and Jameson walking over to us.
Allison didn't seem to hear as she continued to walk around and take photos. I made a mental note to see her later, since now wasn't the right time to start asking questions about what she'd meant earlier when she said there was something big that was going to come out. I sucked in a deep breath, my eyes softened, and, with a sympathetic smile, I greeted Penelope. "Hi, Penelope. I'm Mae West. I'm very sorry we haven't found William yet, but there's no reason to believe he's not going to show up. Do you think he's dead up there somewhere?" Her southern accent was deep. Her blue eyes batted. She clutched her pearls with one hand and reached for Jameson with the other. "No." I watched how easily their hands had come together. I'd expected him to give her a quick squeeze of reassurance before letting go, not a full-on, fingers entwined like they'd done it before, hand-holding. "He was really intoxicated, and I'm sure he's just sleeping it off somewhere."
"Yep, there's a lot of nooks and crannies out there to snuggle up in," Dottie said through a smile. "Like Gina Chanel's boobs down at Sugar Bear's," she whispered after she turned her head from them.
"Are there bears in there?" Penelope's face pinched with worry, as much as it could with all the filler in her forehead and cheeks. I'd know that look anywhere. It wasn't that long ago when I lived in Manhattan and seen the same smooth skin on most of mine and Paul's friends, even the men. "There are bears, but they rarely come on the trail," I tried my best to assure her. My eyes followed Jameson's hand as he slid it out of Penelope's grasp and dragged a finger along her arm before settling her back into a hug and kissing her forehead.
"Don't worry, we're going to find him. This is a separate situation."
He pulled away when he seen the look on my face. Crunching leaves and some rustling from the entrance to the trail caught our attention. Hank Sharp walked out, scanning the area in front of him until he caught my eye. "Detective?" Penelope greeted him. "Does that dead man have anything to do with my William?"
"I'm not sure. Remember the article I showed you at the station?" Hank asked her. "Well, that's the ranger."
Penelope shrieked, falling right back into the arms of Jameson, who was more than ready to comfort her. "Why don't I take Penelope into the office? I can get her a drink and have her rest until you can get all of this cleaned up and out of here." I told Hank in no uncertain terms that the campground was filled with residents, as well as looky-loo campers, just here to see what was going on, and it couldn't be good for business. That way, we can just be one less group of people in your way while you clean this up.
"That's a good idea. Penelope, we can talk in a few minutes," he said to her, but his eyes were focused on Jameson.
I knew we were both thinking this was odd. It was something I'd ask him about later. "It's just right over here." I squeezed between her and Jameson, breaking the hold he had on her and taking her by the elbow. "When is your wedding?" I asked, and noticed the sizable sparkler on her ring finger. "Next month. I love fall weddings, and he's let me plan it all." For a second, she appeared to have forgotten why she was here. "Do you think he's okay? And what do you think the detective meant when he said that William could be involved?" "I'm sure he's okay. I've never had this happen here. Big deal if I left out the fact I'd not been here long, but she didn't need to know that. I'm here now. I think Detective Hank is just making sure he's taking all circumstances into consideration."
"Yeah, William has caused problems here since they drove in a couple of nights ago,"
Dottie grumbled and opened the door to the office.
"I'll grab us some food."
"That'd be great." I showed Penelope to a chair in front of my desk. "I know William and his friends can get a little rambunctious. It's all in fun. We are the first to get married out of the group." She had a faraway look in her eye. "I guess he and Jameson have been friends a long time." There was a little tug in my gut to start asking questions while I had her alone. Even though Ty didn't want me to touch this case with my amazing, yet fumbled, newly found sleuthing skills, I had to be prepared for anything. especially if my livelihood was dependent on it.
Why are you asking about Jameson?
There was a muscle spasm in her smooth jawline. Isn't he the best man? I figured they've been friends a long time. I waved off the question to make her feel like she was off the hot seat.
Yes.
She eased down into the chair and crossed her ankles. She was one of those, my brow rising at my thought. When I was growing up, most of the girls who weren't in foster homes had taken debutante lessons. Of course, I didn't, but the girl next door did, and she said they had a full month on how to properly sit in a chair.
They've been lifelong friends. I'm not going to say it's not been a strain since the situation, she emphasized.
Situation? I asked.
I forget who I'm talking to.
She put her hand up to her pearls and laughed.
I don't mind telling you, since I know you don't know them. But after Jameson caught his mom and William's dad having sex in their pool house, it's been a little tense.
She sniffled, lifting the top of her pointer finger to under her nose.
It's been awful keeping this secret from William.
He doesn't know? I asked.
No, he'd die. Jameson isn't well off like William. Jameson is from the seedier side of our town, if you know what I mean.
She gulped back what appeared to be the start of some tears.
Apparently, it's been going on for years. No one knew until now.
How did you find out? I asked.
It was during our couples shower. Jameson was so upset. I asked him why, and he told me.
She blinked her long lashes slowly.
He begged me not to tell William.
Why would he tell you something so burdensome? I asked, but after she jerked back all wide-eyed, I quickly followed up with another question. I mean, you're getting married, and it's no way to start out a marriage with a lie. The door of the office flew open. Dottie walked in with an armful of vending machine food. She dumped the loot on my desk and pulled out a couple of cans of soda from her pants pockets. We don't have any food left over from the Bible thumpers? I asked. I mean, church ladies? There was a lot of leftovers from the party. These are good. She grabbed a bag of corn nuts and ripped them open. Go on, grab you something. Dottie flung her finger from Penelope to the snacks.
I've not had hot fries in a long time.
Penelope scooted up on the edge of her seat.
I have to keep a good figure and all for my wedding.
It looks like you can use some comfort food, I interjected, because I knew Dottie was going to say something about the wedding not happening, or something like that. I could see it in her eyes as she glared at me. I picked up the package and handed it to Penelope. Here, we won't tell anyone. I tugged Dottie to the side with our backs to Penelope.
Listen, something isn't right here. I think Jameson knows more than he's saying, I whispered.
You think? Dottie snorted. He can't keep his hands off of her, and I ain't so sure she doesn't mind. A knock on the door, followed quickly by the door opening, made us jerk our heads apart. Can we come in? Ty stood at the door with Fifi in his arms.
A puppy?
Penelope jumped up with a ring of red around her mouth where she had shoveled in the hot fries. Penelope, this is my dog Fifi. Ty had to let Fifi down when she started to wiggle around in his arms when she saw me.
Have you been feeding her hot fries?
Penelope joked at Fifi's weight. No, I snickered. She's pregnant by a pug named Roscoe.
My, oh my.
Penelope bent down.
You naughty little poodle, going to the other side of the tracks, huh?
Was she referring to Fifi or her situation with Jameson, I wondered. I had to tuck that question in my sleuthing folder in my head because Hank Sharp bolted through the door. He gave Penelope a second look when he saw the red ring remaining from the hot fries.
Did you find William?
She forgot about Fifi and went over to Hank. No, but we did find this at the scene. He held the evidence bag in his hand and lifted it up. Does this belong to William? Instantly, I recognized it was the sweatshirt the officers had held up at the scene of Corbin's demise. It's got a logo. He flipped the bag.
That's the country club's logo,
Penelope cried out in a gasp.
Does that mean he's gone?
Her shoulders fell. No,
It means that we found it at the scene of the murder of Ranger Corbin Ashbrook, putting your fiancé at the scene."
Frustration came off of Hank in waves.
"This means that finding William is our #1 priority, because he's our person of interest in what happened to Ranger Ashbrook."
When Hank used formal names and specific terms, I knew he meant business. This didn't look good for William.
"I'm going to have to ask you to make a plea to the news media for William to turn himself in for questioning."
Hank rested his hands on his hips, shifting his weight side to side as he waited for her response. Dottie had her mouth all flung open, taking it all in. Ty had picked Fifi back up, and now Penelope was in tears. The tension was so thick, I knew I had to diffuse it if we were going to get anywhere. "I've got an idea." I put my hand up to Hank when I noticed he was about to protest me even talking. "Why don't we get Penelope settled into an open camper or bungalow? Get her a hot shower and some food, and we can come down to the station after that. I can give you my official statement, too."
"We don't got no open bungalows or campers. We're filled to the rim."
Dottie's bird-thin lips wore a scowl.
"I guess she can stay with you and Fifi, since you're good at taking in strays."
"That's a great idea." I wasn't going to let Dottie get my goat. It was true. I'd taken in Bobby Ray Bond when he came to town. I'd taken in Fifi, and now Penelope. "So, what do you say, Hank?" I asked. He heaved a few breaths in and out before he finally opened his mouth.
"Okay, but if you hear from William, I expect you to tell him to turn himself in, and then you find out where he is and call me."
Hank did have a soft side, though he wasn't showing it at this moment. He even scared me a little, though I knew better. Penelope nodded and blinked rapidly.
"I'll see you tonight."
He looked at his watch.
"Can I see you outside?"
he asked me. A loud sigh escaped Ty out of frustration. His eyes narrowed to crinkled slits when I looked at him before I went with Hank outside. The first person I saw outside was Allison, talking to Jameson. She was taking notes, and he was talking. Hank rubbed a hand over the dark stubble along his jawline. I'd not noticed it until now. It gave him an edgy look that agreed with him.
"I'm only agreeing to this because I want you to keep your eyes and ears open."
He gave me an unrelenting stare. "Are you asking for my help?" I asked with a grin. His mouth opened, then he shut it. Then it opened again.
"Yes."
He fiddled with the evidence bag in his hand.
"I don't think you're going to let this go. And somehow, the last couple of times you've been involved in one of my murder cases, you've been a step ahead of me. I'd rather be right beside you on this one."
"Why, Hank Sharp, I don't know what to say." I fluttered my lashes in a joking manner.
"If I want to get into the intimate details of this case and what's going on between Jameson and Penelope, I figured you can do that girly talk."
He tucked the evidence bag up under his armpit and adjusted his stance. "You two got the impression that something funny is going on between them?" I asked. "Like a fling?"
"Did you see how he was rubbing her and then consoling her?"
His nose wrinkled in distaste.
"I put up with that once, but never again."
His words stopped me. "Do you mean to tell me that Nicky Swaggart is the reason for the tension between you and Ty?" I completely abandoned the conversation about the investigation and barreled down the path the two men had clearly avoided. Nicky just so happened to be the daughter of Harrison Swaggart, Dottie's deceased husband. After I'd stuck my nose in the last investigation, I'd uncovered a link between Ty and Hank from high school that had to do with Nicky. Apparently, she had both of their hearts all hog-tied up to hers, but left them both. She'd recently turned up, and through some misfortunate events, she'd committed a crime and was sent off to jail for a 2-year term. This made me happy because I knew she'd look sickly in an orange jail uniform.
"Nicky is in jail and of no importance."
He wasn't biting my line I was throwing out there.
"I'm serious. This is a murder investigation, and we have to find William Hinson. Got it?"
"Yep." My chin drew a big line up and then down.
"Fine. I'll see you in 2 hours. 2.
He held up a couple of fingers. He pulled his dangling sunglasses out from his suit pocket and slipped them back on his face.
We'll get this mess cleaned up, and you'll be back to normal in a few minutes.
I stood there and watched him walk away. There was an excitement rolling around my heart. It was a combination of helping on the case and the tension between us. This was where the water that is my love life got murky. It was like I had an angel on one shoulder and a little devil on the other. On the angel's shoulder was Ty. I loved how Ty was a family guy. He loved Fifi and had such amazing manners. On the devil's shoulder was Hank. The tough exterior, the manly good looks, and the edginess and hint of danger were always appealing. He also checked on me from time to time in a no-one-better-mess-with-me way, and it made my motor run. And I couldn't help but wonder why every time Ty and I tried to have a moment that would move us beyond the flirtatious stage, there was a situation that jerked us apart. Clearly, there was something. There was no time to ponder what that was. I had an undercover job to do, and I was going to do it. After all, it was for the good of Happy Trails and my livelihood. 7. Are you sure it's okay I stay here? Penelope sat on the couch, rubbing Fifi. If I did care, it wouldn't matter because Fifi seemed to be enjoying Penelope's company, since she'd not stopped rubbing on her since she got here. Yes. I poured fresh coffee into 2 mugs and handed her one. The pumpkin spice and cinnamon blend was perfect for a fall night, especially one that had gotten much chillier as the day had gone on. And I wasn't just referring to the weather. It might be a little tight in here, but we will manage. I'm sure William will be back any time. I pushed a strand of my curly hair behind my ear, remembering my appointment at Cuticles tomorrow, and wondering if William wasn't back, that it'd make a good excuse not to go. Do you think? Penelope's perfectly waxed brows lifted with a bit of hope twinkling in her eyes. You don't think he had anything to do with that ranger getting killed? Let's just say that it doesn't look good that he had an open fight with Corbin yesterday, and the newspaper printed it. I held the cup of coffee with both hands. Now that he's missing, it makes him look like there's something fishy. I'm so worried, she said. Maybe I can help. I was laying the groundwork for my first step into the investigation. I've been able to help the police with a couple cases, so why don't I try my hand at finding William? When I talked to Detective Hank Sharp, I got the distinct impression that Corbin's death and William's disappearance were connected. I wasn't so sure. From an outsider who knew nothing about Penelope, William, or Jameson, and if I'd walked up on the scene yesterday where Jameson had been consoling Penelope, I thought they were an item. Of course, my mind went there. This could possibly be 2 separate cases. Jameson was as in love with Penelope as she was with him. Who planned the bachelor party? I asked. I mean, it's not like we get a lot of those here. We're a family campground. Jameson. He said, what better way to bond as a group of men than in the woods? She smiled. He's always been so nice to William and wanting to keep the friends together. I bet he does, I thought, and then thought some more about how Jameson might have thought it would be easy to get rid of William in the Daniel Boone National Park after they got him all drunked up. Most accidental deaths in the park had to do with excessive drinking and falling off a cliff. Easy way to cover a murder, if you asked me. Has William ever been camping? I asked. Are you kidding? She laughed and took a drink of her coffee. She rubbed her free hand along Fifi's belly, since Fifi had turned over on her back, with her little legs sticking up in the air. We did go to Arizona once, and stayed in a tent that had a king-size bed, bathroom, and tent service. Glamping, I winked, trying to keep the conversation light, so she'd continue to tell me about their life. Did Jameson go to that with you? He goes a lot of places with us. She shifted and didn't make eye contact. I know you said William is the first to get married, but does Jameson have a girlfriend? I asked. No. She lifted her head, her eyes hooded by her brows. She tossed her head to the side. Her hair flung over her shoulder. I'm hungry. Do you have anything to eat? That was the end of that conversation, which told me I'd struck a nerve somewhere, yet I didn't feel like it was time to question her about Jameson and his feelings for her. We do have an hour before we go see Hank at the station, so we can head into town. I sat my coffee down. Let me take Fifi out to potty and put some kibble in her bowl. Someone gotta go potty. She talked baby talk to Fifi and picked her up. I can help. Sure. I walked over to the camper door and opened it, walking down the steps to hold the door for them. She doesn't need a leash. She's great at staying in our lot. It was the time of the year dusk painted the sky orange around 5:30 p.m., and we were completely covered in darkness by 6 p.m. The only light in the sky was a sprinkling of stars and the moon. Campers were fascinated how dark it truly was, since we didn't have a big city in the distance to give off light. Hi there, Chuck said as he walked by the camper. Beth was snuggled up to him with a big grin on her face. Are you two having a good time? I asked, hoping they'd say yes, and the events of the day hadn't ruined their trip. We've had a wonderful 24 hours. Beth bounced on her toes. Yesterday we went into downtown Normal. We started at the Trails coffee shop for a wonderful cup of pour-over coffee. It was tasty. Chuck nodded. You can get some of their really good coffee in the recreation center in the morning. I pointed to the building in the distance. Gert Hobson and I are friends. They smiled at each other. But do you have the muffins from the cookie crumble? Beth asked with a little hope in her tone. As a matter of fact, we do. Same place. It was perfect how I was able to showcase the area's small businesses. I'm so glad we decided to stay. Beth's shoulders raised to her ears. Her eyes squinted after she smiled. Don't forget we stopped at Sweet Smell Flower Shop because they had the most beautiful bouquet of wildflowers in the display window. Chuck didn't look quite as enthusiastic. As they talked about how they'd gone to the Tough Nickel thrift shop and found a rare dish Beth's mom was going to love, I noticed Penelope had walked Fifi a few campers down. Where are you headed? I asked Chuck. We thought we'd just take a night walk and see what was going on down there today. Chuck nodded toward the front of the campground at the entrance to Red Fox Trail. Do you remember the rowdy group of guys who came in after you for the bachelor party? I asked. Both of them smiled and nodded, which was odd since they were going to leave because of them. One of the members of the party is missing. Oh no! Beth's brows formed a V. She gave the same worried look to Chuck. What do you mean missing? He asked. He had a few too many to drink and I had to put him back in the bungalow, but he must have woken up and left. His friends think that he'll be back, but we're just being cautious, you know? I shrugged and walked with them so I could get Fifi from Penelope. Hey, Maybelline. Bobby Ray Bond, my childhood friend, came shuffling towards us. His baseball cap was on backwards, his blue mechanic overalls were spotted with oil stains, and his hands were filthy. I heard there were some goings-on around here today. Dead ranger and missing camper. Dead ranger? Chuck stopped. Beth gasped. Yeah. Bobby Ray Bond's nose curled. He nodded. Found on a trail. Nothing is official on how he died. I tried to make the situation seem less dire than it really was. Do they think there's a killer here? I mean, I've seen movies, and there are plenty of places people can hide out there. Beth's face was now white as the moon. We never said anyone was killed, I clarified, trying to ease the fear that crossed her face. Is that Fifi? Here, Fifi, Bobby Ray called. She darted out of the shadow of one of the campers and came running towards us, Penelope lagging behind. Penelope? Beth's voice escalated. We didn't know you and Jameson were staying here. Chuck, look, it's Penelope. Penelope nervously cleared her throat. My fiancé is the one missing. Jameson? Beth rushed over to Penelope. Oh, no. We just had the best time with the two of you. What happened?
Well, let me know if you need anything, Maybelline. Bobby loved to use my real name, though I'd not gone by it in years. I've got tomorrow off. Do you think you can look at the golf cart tomorrow? I asked, since Bobby Ray was a mechanic. He'd started working for Grassel's gas station, located in downtown Normal, just a few days after he'd shown up to see me. He'd seen the article where Allison Gilbert had interviewed me for the National Parks of America magazine. It just so happened Joel Grassel needed a mechanic, and there was none finer than Bobby Ray. First thing after my coffee. He walked off to the bungalow where he was staying until he saved enough to get a small house in town. Then I turned back to Penelope.
Jameson isn't missing.
Her voice trailed off, her chin drew down to her chest, and she fiddled with those pretty, long, pink fingernails. It appeared that William's dad and Jameson's mom, and Fifi and Roscoe, weren't the only ones to play on the wrong side of the tracks in their relationships.
We better get on our way.
I gave her a flat look. Detective Hank Sharp is waiting for us.
I don't understand.
Beth blinked several times in confusion.
I thought you...
Beth, let's go. Chuck obviously knew something was off here.
Do you understand?
Beth asked him, not letting it go.
Chuck?
Let's go, Chuck told her in a more demanding voice and grabbed her by the arm to drag her along, even though she was fighting and trying to turn around to look at Penelope, falling all over her feet.
I guess you're going to want an explanation about that,
Penelope asked me. I picked up Fifi and picked up the pace on my way back towards my camper.
Mae?
Penelope walked briskly to keep up with me.
I can explain.
Listen here. I quickly turned around. Fifi started to lick my face. She could tell I was upset.
I don't have time for games. I'm running a business here. You lied to the police. I thought I had a sad, soon-to-be bride staying with me while they found her fiancé. You are nothing but a liar, and I can't help but to think that you and Jameson had something to do with William's disappearance.
I darted off with one thing in mind, get to the police station and tell Hank my theory.
Mae, it's not like that.
Penelope's voice echoed behind me. You're right. I stopped at the camper door and jerked it open. I turned to face her rushing towards me. You and Jameson had a plan all this time to bring William here, get him drunk, and throw him off a cliff. Easy peasy. Best friend comforts grieving bride, and they fall in love. My face contorted. How convenient. A little too convenient if you ask me. But who is asking me? I shrugged. Fifi whined in my arms. I reached over the 2 small steps leading up into the camper and sat her on the floor inside. When Corbin walked up to the 2 of you getting rid of William, you decided to kill him, which was perfect because William and Corbin had a very public fight yesterday, making it seem like he'd be the likely suspect to kill Corbin and then disappear. I had it all worked out in my head, and it all seemed logical.
That's not true. It's not,
she screamed, tears streaming down her face.
I love William.
But you liked the secret affair with his best friend more? I asked with disgust. You know what? I don't even want to know. I put my hand out in front of me. You can tell Hank all of this.
I can't,
she cried ugly. Her pretty face was blotchy, with black streaks running from her eyes, and her lipstick smeared.
William will kill me.
William? An evil laugh escaped me. You killed him.
No, we didn't,
she screamed and fell to her knees.
We were going to tell him after this bachelor party, but he saw us in downtown Normal when he was drunk last night. We were kissing in the town square, she sobbed. We tried to stop him. He took off, and we couldn't find him.
She continued to mutter something through her tears, but I wasn't going to let her stay with me another minute. I threw some kibble in Fifi's bowl, made sure she had water, and grabbed my purse. You can tell Hank. I locked the door behind me and headed to the car. Are you coming, or am I going to have to call the police? She pushed herself up to stand. Her polished look had become disheveled and broken. Like a zombie, she walked to the car. Her eyes were blank.
The pretty-as-a-picture debutante look with perfect makeup and tidy clothes had disappeared. "Mae, you don't understand," she pleaded with me from the other side of the car, breaking the silence as we drove out of the campground. "I understand just fine," I told her and gripped the wheel. Downtown Normal was just a short 5 or so minutes from the campground, but the police station, where the detectives had their offices, was a little bit outside downtown, in the business district, and attached to the white courthouse. You couldn't miss the courthouse. It was the tallest building in Normal, and you could see the steeple from afar. Hank's car was butted up to the side of the building, and I pulled in next to his car. "Please, let me explain before we go in there." Her tears had dried, and her eyes were wide. I don't know what got into me, but I decided to give her one shot. Maybe it was the drive over, and the fact that she'd finally given me a few moments of silence so my brain could process what had come to light at the campground. "I've been with William since high school. I would have to be some sort of club host and wife that has to always look perfect. It's not like that with Jameson." Her face suddenly lit up after she said his name. "He doesn't care if I look like this or wear sweatpants. He loves that I eat with my fingers sometimes." Her shoulders relaxed. "I could live in a shack with him and be so happy. Not the mansion William has us living in." "Did you kill William?" I asked. "No," she shook her head. "We ran after him. He took off. I can't find him anywhere." "Why didn't you just break off the engagement when you realized you were in love with Jameson?" I asked. "That's why I came here. I texted Jameson and told him that they couldn't go through with this weekend because I couldn't go through with the wedding. I asked him to meet in downtown Normal. I think William saw Jameson's phone when they were all hiking, and he was back at the bungalow sleeping off the booze." Her chest lifted, and she let out a long sigh, like it felt good to get all of this out in the open. "It was like he was waiting for us to show up there." Her fingers started to tremble. "William can be a very determined man." "Determined as in getting what he wants?" I asked. "At any cost." Her voice trailed off. "He's very controlling and quick to anger. It's another reason I didn't break off the engagement yet." "What did Jameson say about not going through with the wedding?" I asked. "He said we'd discuss it after we got back home. He told me he loved me, and I told him I loved him. That's when we kissed, and William caught us." She gulped, licked her lips, and looked over at me. "Jameson and I have been together since, looking for him. That's when we met the couple from the campground. Jameson and I put on a happy couple face and pretended to be something we aren't, at least not yet." "Do you think William killed Ranger Corbin Ashbrook?" I asked, now knowing he can be quick-tempered. "I'd like to think he'd never hurt anyone, but I can't say he's never knocked me around." Her nose flared, and she tucked her lips between her teeth as though she were biting back tears. "I'm not sure what he'd do if someone pushed him to his limits." The door of the police station flung open. Allison Gilbert bolted out with her camera swinging around her neck. "Allison!" I opened the door and called to her. She turned with a quick snap of her thin shoulders. A look of disbelief, rage, and frustration arranged her facial features. "What's going on?" I asked. "Can you believe they think I'm a suspect?" She jerked her head back, her fists clenched at her sides. "Something about the argument Corbin and I had about the article gives me motive? Good." There was a look of relief on Penelope's face. "That means me and Jameson aren't suspects." "Honey, everyone is a suspect, including you and your boyfriend." Allison pinched her lips together. "My fiancé, you mean?" Penelope wiggled her ring finger in the air. "No, sugar." There was all sorts of piss and vinegar in Allison's tone. "Your boyfriend. I snapped several photos around downtown yesterday for the Out and About section of the newspaper. I got an eyeful and a camera full of photos." She stuck her hand in the camera bag that was stretched across her body, reached in, and took out an inhaler. Penelope stood there, stunned. Her eyes bugged open as her lashes took long and rapid blinks. "Seasonal allergies," Allison said after she noticed me watching her with the inhaler. She shook the bottle before taking a few quick inhales. "Stress, too." "Why on earth do you think you're a suspect?" I asked. "Because I've been looking into this drought shutdown. Corbin has been dragging his feet on it. I found it interesting because we all know that he was a by-the-book kind of guy, and he's never dragged his feet before." She put the inhaler in her bag and took out a file. "If you go back through the 14 years he's been here, this is the first time he let some time pass." She flipped the file open and pointed to words that really meant nothing to me since I'd not read the entire report. "Initially, I thought it was because he was taking the thriving economy into his decision, but as I started to investigate for the story, he threatened me." "He did?" My eyebrows dipped in a frown. Not that I knew Corbin well, but he did come to the office a few times a week to say hello. What I did know of him, threatening somebody, was not something I'd ever think he would do. "Yeah, he said that if I wrote anything about the drought, he'd see to it that I'd be out of the National Park Office and out of a job. He's no different than Ardeen." Her jaw tensed, and she shook her head while rolling her eyes. There was frustration written all over her, including her tense stance. "The Rangers are located in the same building." "I didn't know he was like that at all. I'm assuming Ardeen is his wife?" Allison confirmed with a nod. I tried to think back if I'd ever heard the girls from the laundry club say something about Corbin Ashbrook or his wife. That's so hard to believe. He never appeared to be that way. All I can think of is that I pushed a button and was on the trail of something bigger than just the drought. Her words turned my curious side on. "Do you have any clue what it is?" I asked. "I have an inkling." Her brow rose. "Ahem." The sound of someone clearing their throat caught our attention. Hank Sharp was standing at the door of the station with his hands on his hips, staring at us. He pulled the sleeve of his button-down shirt up and looked at his watch. He glanced back up at us and tapped the face of the watch. "Can I stop by and see you after this?" I asked Allison. "Sure. I've been ordered not to leave town." She rolled her eyes so hard. Poor Penelope was so scared that she was visibly shaking. It was like she was walking the gangplank to her death. "For someone who is so sure she's innocent, you're awfully nervous." I made the observation. "Hank can smell fear a mile away. If you didn't do this, I suggest you get it together." There was a slight shift in her posture as we got closer to the door to the police station, where Hank was patiently waiting.
"Ladies, I have comfy seats for both of you, if you'll follow me."
He thought he was being so funny. It didn't amuse me. We followed him into the station and through the door without having us go through the check-in process at the window. "Mae West." Agnes Swift sat behind the window on her perch. She clapped her hands in delight. Her saggy jaws tightened slightly when she smiled. Her short gray hair was curled around her head. "I keep telling my grandson to stop letting his pride get in the way and get on over to Happy Trails to ask you out on an official date," she snickered. "Like a coffee pot is a date."
"Granny, don't you have some work to do?"
Hank quickly stopped Agnes from telling me any more. "The coffee pot was a date?" I asked her, ignoring him. I thought he brought me that coffee pot because he felt sorry for me, since I couldn't offer him a big cup from the Keurig. Here was my quandary in the love life department. I just adored Agnes, and if Hank wasn't such a hard person, we might have gotten together long before I had my feelings for Ty.
"Mae."
Hank said my name in a low southern drawl that would make any gal tingle.
"Seriously, I have a job to do, and you aren't making it easy."
It just so happened all the officers in the station had turned around and were watching us in amusement. Granny Agnes must have let everyone know how she felt about me and Hank getting together. "Who do you want to talk to first?" I asked, making it more official.
"Why don't I talk to you first?"
he suggested.
"Penelope, you can sit right here."
Hank and I passed another interrogation room on our way back to where he was going to question me. Jameson was in there with a couple of different officers and a ranger, all of them towering over him. His face looked out the window, and our eyes caught. I gulped and continued walking. "You obviously know Jameson and Penelope are an item, right?" I asked.
"Yeah."
He opened a door for me and let me walk in first.
"Just sit anywhere. I let all of William's friends go home, but Jameson."
He went over the piece of paper that had my statement on it from earlier. I signed it to make it an official document to be put into the case file. I couldn't help but see the evidence sheet. "What did you collect at the scene?" I asked, and watched as he sat on the edge of the seat and gathered the papers into the file.
"We got that sweatshirt. We also combed the bungalow for any DNA of William's, and the DNA around the neck of the sweatshirt matches the DNA we collected from his other things. His friends did say it was his sweatshirt. There's no blood or any DNA of Corbin's on it."
He rubbed his hand through his hair. "When will the autopsy be back?" My jaw dropped.
"I'm hoping to get an initial report soon."
He looked at his watch.
"We found an inhaler."
The lines around his eyes deepened. "Inhaler?" I gulped. Thoughts of Allison's story swirled in my brain.
"What? Do you know someone with an inhaler?"
he asked, pulling his shoulders back into a tall, erect position. "Just odd." I didn't answer the question. There was a good reason for that. Just a few short hours ago, he'd asked me to help him with the investigation. Though Allison had used the inhaler a few minutes ago, she'd not tried to cover it up. And besides, I truly wanted to know what she thought she'd uncovered with Corbin. When I talked with her later tonight, and felt like she truly did kill him, I'd let Hank know that she had an inhaler.
"We need to find William. Do you think she knows where he is?"
He referred to Penelope. "I don't think so, but I had no clue she and Jameson were an item until one of the tourists at the campground apparently had a good chat with them downtown. All of this was adding up to my theory that William had killed Corbin out of anger. Penelope did say that William has a temper, and I wonder if he killed Corbin after he'd gone back to the campground. Maybe he and Corbin had words, and William followed him up to the trail. They fought, and somehow William killed Corbin?" I asked in a suggestive way, since we'd yet been told the way he died.
"We're looking at all angles. I found out about the affair between Penelope and Jameson after I looked through Allison's photos. I recognized her instantly, and then him when I went to the crime scene. They were just a little too lovey-dovey to me."
Hank pulled out a couple of photos of the two lovebirds Allison had taken.
"Here's one of William seeing them. He's got on the sweatshirt, so we know he'd been wearing it. The coroner said that Corbin died this morning. So where was William all night? And where is he now?"
He held the photo up to his face and stared at it.
"I talked to his family. They're getting his medical records, but they said he didn't use an inhaler. We're in the process of testing the DNA on it, and we have a call into the doctor who was on the prescription label. We're working on a subpoena."
He turned when the door opened.
"Sir, you've got a call from Corbin's wife," he said, "and we also just got this over the fax."
The officer handed Hank a piece of paper. I recognized the stamp on the top of the page. It was from the coroner's office.
"Okay, we are done here."
Hank turned back to me. "Is that the initial autopsy report?" I asked. Hank paused, as though he were studying on whether to tell me or not.
"Yeah. Time of death is around 11 a.m.
He gnawed on the inside of his jaw.
"Corbin died of anaphylactic shock. Seems the inhaler might be his."
"Peanuts!" I gasped.
"How did you know?"
Hank's brows hooded over his eyes. "Yesterday at the campground party, he was offered a peanut butter cookie. He refused it because he said he was allergic to peanuts. So why would he eat peanut butter?" There was something wrong with this picture.
"Let's get together in the morning over coffee to discuss all this, and I'll let you know what I'd like you to listen out for, because I agree with you. Something doesn't seem right."
He rocked back on his heels. Okay, I nodded. Since Jameson is in the bungalow alone, Penelope can stay with him.
How's Fifi? Hank asked.
She's about to bust, I laughed.
Granny Agnes wants a puppy, he smirked. I'm sorry about what she said earlier. She's always sticking her nose in places it doesn't belong.
It's okay. I brushed it off. The family always likes me. It's the men that don't. I clamped my mouth shut, shocked I'd even said that.
I'm sure you have no problem with men, Mae West.
His face softened and his eyes lingered on my face.
Sir?
The officer stuck his head back into the door.
I'll see you in the morning.
Hank brushed past me and out the door. His cologne brushed past my nose, filling my lungs and teasing my heart. When I left the room where Hank had questioned me, I found Penelope sitting next to Jameson, waiting for her turn in the interrogation room. Jameson told me he'd wait for Penelope and bring her back to the campground, since they weren't allowed to leave town, which made this a perfect time for me to question Allison Gilbert alone. Her office was located in the Daniel Boone National Park office in the neighboring town. Since the police station was on the outskirts of town, it was close to her office and a quick ride. The building was a typical brown brick building built in the 60s. The parking lot had only one car in it, and it belonged to Allison. The last 2 windows on the side of the building were illuminated, and I remembered those were the windows in the conference room where she'd interviewed me. The front door was unlocked, but the sign posted the hours. According to the time, the building should have been closed. "Allison?" I hollered as I entered the building. There was a deserted welcome desk with all the literature you'd ever need about the Daniel Boone National Park and surrounding towns. "It's me, Mae West." My eyes scanned down the brochure holder, and a smile crossed my face after I'd seen the new brochures for Happy Trails Campground that Abby Fawn had put together. They were gorgeous, with the photos of the lake, recreation center, bungalows, and a few campers. The families in the photos sure were having a good time. I remember when Abby and Allison had come to the campground to take those pictures. Abby had hired Allison to do them for us. It was a pretty reasonable fee, too. "Allison?" I called down the hall where I'd seen the lights coming out of the conference room. I headed on down the hallway. The place was big. She was probably going to the bathroom and would be back shortly. The other office doors were shut. There were 2 skinny and long windows on each side of the doors, showing the darkness inside. It was deeply silent and eerie. The quiet had engulfed me with each step, and I was a bit relieved when I made it to the light of the conference room. Until I stepped inside. "Allison!" I screamed and ran over when I saw her lying on the floor with her arms in football goal position and her legs bent to one side. "Oh my God! Oh my God!" I panted as I took her into my arms and blood rushed out the back of her head. I put her back down and rubbed my temples. My heart raced as I started to panic. I flailed my hands at my wrist and I paced back and forth, trying to gather my wits. "Hank!" With trembling hands, somehow, I dialed Hank's number. "Hank, Allison is dead."
"What?"
he gasped from the other end of the phone. "Allison Gilbert is dead. Just come to the Daniel Boone National Park office." I told him to hurry up in a shaky voice. There was no way I was staying inside with Allison. I ran outside to sit down on the curb in front of the building and wait for Hank.